Hi guys, tonight we're travelling into a world of wagon wheels, endless grass and distant mountains that seem to float like blue ghosts at the edge of the earth. You can almost hear it already. The creak of dry wood, the soft snort of oxen, the whisper of wind moving through prairie grass taller than your knees. Somewhere ahead lies Oregon, a word that sounds almost magical to people in the eastern United States during the early 19th century. It means fertile land, fresh beginnings, and perhaps the chance to become someone entirely new. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights. You begin far from wagon ruts and frontier forts. You begin before the trail becomes famous. Before thousands of settlers drag their lives westward. Before children walk beside wagons for 2,000 miles, wondering when dinner might happen. Before someone inevitably loses a boot in a muddy river and spends the next week complaining about it. The land that will become the Oregon Trail is already alive. Very alive. Long before American settlers dream of Oregon, vast networks of indigenous nations move across this landscape. The plains, mountains, rivers and valleys are not empty wilderness waiting to be discovered. That myth comes much later, and it is deeply misleading. The land is inhabited, understood and travelled by people who know every water source, every seasonal route and every dangerous crossing. Your mind drifts across the Great Plains. You see the homelands of nations such as the Lakota Cheyenne Arapara, Pawnee and many others. Further west across the mountains and river systems, communities trade goods, stories, horses and knowledge. Trails already exist. They simply do not look like the wagon roads Americans later imagine. They are footpaths, horse routes, trade corridors, memory maps carried in human minds. According to research from Harvard University and major American historians of westward expansion, indigenous trade networks across North America were extraordinarily sophisticated, linking distant regions centuries before large-scale settler migration. Goods such as shells, obsidian, horses' hides, and crafted tools travelled remarkable distances through exchange systems built on trust, diplomacy, and survival. That matters, because the Oregon Trail does not appear from nowhere. It grows over older roads. In the early 19th century, another group enters this landscape in increasing numbers. Fur trappers, mountain men, traders working for companies eager to profit from beaver pelts. European fashion unexpectedly helps shape American geography, which is a wonderfully strange sentence to say before sleep. Fancy hats matter, more than you might think. In cities far away, fashionable felt hats create huge demand for beaver fur. That demand sends men westward into remote river valleys. Companies like the Hudson's Bay Company and the American Fur Company push deeper into Western Territory, mapping rivers and passes along the way. You can picture one of these trappers now. His clothes smell of wet leather and wood smoke. His boots are cracked. His beard has long surrendered to civilization. He rides through cold morning fog beside a river scanning for tracks. His world is harsh, isolated, and deeply physical. Hunger is familiar. So is silence. Sometimes weeks of silence. Just wind. Modern historians from Yale University note that these early trappers became some of the first non-indigenous guides to document usable western routes for later migrants. They were not planning family migration corridors. They were hunting profit. But history often works through unintended consequences. A man chasing beaver can accidentally help build a nation. Pause on that for a moment. The Rocky Mountains remain the Great Barrier. For Eastern Americans, they loom in imagination like an impossible wall. Sharp peaks suggest danger, starvation, freezing nights, and broken wheels. If wagons cannot cross safely, large-scale migration remains fantasy. Yet there are passages. One of the most important is South Pass, located in present-day Wyoming. Unlike steep mountain routes, South Pass offers a broad, gradual corridor through the Rockies. It does not feel dramatic in the way movies might suggest. No towering cliff edge, No narrow, heroic canyon, just a surprisingly manageable opening. That is exactly why it matters. Research from Stanford University emphasizes that South Pass became essential because wagons could traverse it with relative safety compared to harsher routes. Relative safety, however, is doing heroic work in that sentence. Safe is not the same as easy, not even close. Historians still debate exactly when the route shifted from specialized trapper knowledge to broader public awareness. Some argue commercial reports spread the knowledge first. Others emphasize missionary letters and explorer accounts. No clear agreement survives on the precise turning point, but consensus holds that the late 1830s mark a major transition. Information starts moving east. Stories spread. And stories are powerful. Imagine a farmer in Missouri around 1838. He owns land, but perhaps not enough. Soil may be exhausted. Debt may hang over every harvest. Children are growing. Inheritance becomes complicated when farmland must be divided among many sons. Then rumors arrive. Land in Oregon is fertile. Rain is steady. Timber is abundant. Game is plentiful. A better life might exist. The idea settles into the mind like a seed. It grows quietly at first, then relentlessly. In your ears, the echo changes into the sounds of frontier settlements near the western edge of American expansion. You hear blacksmith hammers striking iron, horses shuffle in dirt, paper maps unfold on rough wooden tables. Men argue over distances they barely understand. How far is Oregon? Depends who you ask. Some estimates are optimistic, some wildly wrong. Some are essentially frontier versions of someone confidently giving directions while having no idea where they are. Take the second river or third, turn left at the mountain. Very helpful. Archival records show that many Eastern Americans possessed astonishingly vague knowledge of Western geography. Maps were improving, but vast regions remained poorly understood by ordinary settlers. Even literate households often relied on guidebooks filled with inconsistent advice. Some guides were useful, some were not. Very not. You can almost smell candle wax melting beside those guidebooks as families read aloud during winter evenings. Mothers listen while mending clothes. Fathers calculate costs. Children hear only the exciting parts. Adventure, buffalo. Mountains, freedom. Children rarely obsess over axle grease. Adults do, because logistics determine survival. This is perhaps the most human truth of the Oregon Trail. Grand dreams depend on painfully practical details. Flour, salt pork, spare wheels, ox harnesses, rope, needles, water barrels, nails, boots, more boots. Always more boots. For a moment it feels as though history slows. You stand at the threshold of something enormous. The trail is not yet a giant migration route. No endless wagon trains stretch across the plains, but all ingredients now exist. Ancient paths, new ambitions, economic pressure, geographic knowledge, national desire. Soon these forces will collide, and when they do, the American landscape changes forever, not only for settlers, not only for governments, for indigenous nations as well, whose worlds will be transformed, pressured and often violently disrupted by the migration to come. That reality sits quietly here at the beginning, easy to ignore, impossible to erase. The prairie wind keeps moving. Grass bends under evening light. Somewhere in the distance a campfire burns low. Horse breath rises in cold air. Above, stars appear one by one across a sky so wide it almost feels unreal. The road is not yet crowded, but it is waiting, and soon thousands will answer its call. The prairie wind still lingers in your ears, but now something shifts. The land remains vast, yet the story becomes more personal. A trail can exist in soil, but it does not become history until people begin to believe in what lies at the other end. And belief is powerful, sometimes more powerful than facts. In the early 1840s, Oregon stops being merely a distant place on a map and becomes an idea, a promise, a whispered answer to hardship. For struggling farmers, restless young families, and ambitious settlers across the eastern United States, Oregon begins to glow in the imagination like a lantern in darkness. Green valleys, rich soil, free land, fresh beginnings. It sounds almost suspiciously perfect. That should make anyone cautious. Yet hope rarely waits for complete information. Your mind drifts into a modest farmhouse somewhere in Illinois. The evening is cold, wood smoke clings to the rafters. Supper is simple, perhaps beans, coarse bread, and salted pork. A father reads aloud from a newspaper while his wife quietly mends worn clothing by candlelight. The article speaks of Oregon again. Reports from missionaries, explorers, and traders circulate through newspapers, pamphlets, sermons, and letters. Each retelling adds something. Some accounts remain practical, others become almost mythical. Fertile valleys are described in glowing language. Rivers teem with fish. Forests seem endless. Rain ensures abundant harvests. Little wonder people listen. Research from University of Chicago notes that migration enthusiasm in the 1840s was fueled not only by economic pressures, but also by information networks that rapidly spread frontier opportunity through print culture. Newspapers did not merely report westward migration, they helped create it. Words move people, sometimes entire nations. One name becomes especially important: Marcus Whitman. Whitman, a missionary in the Pacific Northwest, later becomes deeply woven into Oregon Trail lore. A famous story claims he made a dramatic winter journey east and helped convince Americans that wagons could reach Oregon safely. It is a compelling story, almost too compelling. Historians still debate how much influence Whitman truly had. Modern scholarship from researchers at Columbia University suggests his later legendary status may have been exaggerated by 19th century nationalist narratives. Accounts differ sharply, and some witnesses later contradicted one another. That happens often in history. Memory edits, myth polishes, reality gets messy. Still, whether or not Whitman single-handedly changed history, missionary reports absolutely mattered. Settlers trusted letters from people who had seen Oregon firsthand. Those letters carried emotional force that maps alone could not provide. Imagine reading one. The paper feels rough, under tired fingers. Candlelight flickers. The writer describes orchards, valleys, fresh water, and opportunity. The message seems clear. Come west, start over. For many Americans, the appeal is not only economic, it is emotional. The United States in the 1840s is expanding rapidly, yet prosperity remains uneven. Land ownership represents independence and security. In crowded eastern communities, land grows expensive or fragmented through inheritance. A son may inherit too little. A daughter may marry into debt. A family may feel trapped. Oregon offers escape. That word matters. Escape from poverty. Escape from crowded settlements. Escape from social limits. Escape from the feeling that life has already been decided. Your ears pick up another sound now. Political speeches, public meetings, tavern arguments. Oregon becomes tied to a larger national idea expansion. Americans increasingly believe the nation is destined to spread westward across the continent. This belief later becomes associated with the phrase manifest destiny, though ordinary settlers rarely speak in grand ideological terms while patching wagon wheels. They speak more practically. Can we afford flour? Will the oxen survive? Can the baby endure the journey? That is the human side of expansion. Grand ideas always meet sore feet. According to historians from Princeton University, westward migration reflected both national ambition and intimate household decision-making. Policy mattered, yes, but so did crop failures, debts, marriages, and local rumours. History often turns on dinner-table conversations. You can almost hear one. A husband leans back after supper, exhausted from work. He says little at first. His wife already senses something. She knows that look. He unfolds a map. Not a precise one, of course. Frontier maps often resemble confident guesses. He points west. She stares. Silence. Then questions. What about the children? What about winter? What if someone gets sick? What if Oregon is nothing like they say? Reasonable questions. Very reasonable. And yet many families still choose the journey. Why? Because staying can feel riskier than leaving. Pause there. That emotional truth echoes across migration history worldwide. People rarely uproot their lives because change feels comfortable. They move because remaining still becomes unbearable, or because hope becomes irresistible. Sometimes both. Meanwhile, Oregon itself is politically contested. The region known as the Oregon Country is jointly occupied by the United States and United Kingdom under earlier agreements. Both powers maintain interests there, especially through the Hudson's Bay Company. This geopolitical uncertainty adds urgency. More American settlers moving west strengthens US claims. More bodies on the land can influence borders. That sounds cold, but governments think this way. Settlers become demographic arguments. Families become strategic leverage. Oxen unintentionally participate in international politics. No one tells the oxen, probably for the best. Your mind drifts westward again, this time toward the lush valleys of the Pacific Northwest. Rain darkens cedar bark. Rivers cut through dense forests. Mist hangs low over fertile land. Salmon move upstream in astonishing numbers. Compared with dry plains farther east, Oregon feels almost impossibly rich. Not paradise, but close enough to inspire longing. Modern environmental historians from University of California emphasize that Oregon's ecological abundance genuinely impressed many newcomers. Fertile volcanic soils, temperate climate, and access to timber made the Willamette Valley especially attractive for agriculture. That part was not fantasy, though fantasy still played a role. Promoters often minimized hardship. Guidebooks could sound reassuring in ways that feel almost criminal. Some implied healthy families could complete the journey with manageable difficulty. Manageable, a dangerous word. It smooths over risk. It hides suffering. It quietly ignores graves. And there will be many graves. Not yet, but soon. For a moment it feels as though time slows again. Somewhere in Missouri, a family makes its decision. The father sells equipment. The mother begins sorting household goods. Children sense change before they understand it. Their world is about to end and begin. A girl folds a quilt sewn by her grandmother. A boy sharpens a pocket knife he treasures far more than necessary. A mother runs her hand across a doorway she may never touch again. Intimate moments, small moments. History lives inside them, not just treaties and maps. Hands, voices. Quiet fear, exhausted hope. The dream of Oregon now spreads faster each season. More letters arrive. More stories circulate. More families dare to imagine the impossible. Soon imagining will not be enough. Soon wheels will turn. Soon wagons will roll west into open country. And once they begin, there will be no easy way back. The promise of Oregon has done its work. It has entered the American imagination. It has become hunger. The hunger for Oregon now feels real. It sits in farmhouses, town squares, general stores and church gatherings like a quiet fever. Families speak about leaving in half whispers as though saying the plan too loudly might make it collapse. The dream is alive, but one enormous problem remains. How do you actually get there? Dreams are light. Wagons are heavy. Very heavy. A map may show a path west, but crossing the American continent in the 1840s is not a simple matter of following a road. Much of the journey passes through lands that most eastern settlers know only through rumour sketch maps and second-hand stories. The biggest obstacle remains the towering spine of western North America, the Rocky Mountains. Even the name feels severe. For many Americans, the Rockies exist more as a psychological wall than a geographic feature. They symbolize danger, isolation, and the terrifying possibility of being trapped far from help. Snow cliffs, avalanches, broken wheels, starving livestock. Popular imagination fills the mountains with every frontier fear. Not entirely unfair, mountains rarely negotiate, yet not all mountain routes are equally deadly. Your mind drifts westward into a landscape of rolling sage-cold streams and broad valleys. Morning air feels thin. Horse breath rises in pale clouds. Boots crunch over frost-hardened ground. Somewhere ahead lies one of the most important gateways in American migration history, South Pass. It does not look dramatic. That surprises many people. You might expect a narrow canyon or knife-edge ridge. Instead, South Pass in Wyoming is wide and gradual, a broad saddle through the Rockies that allows wagons to cross without impossible climbing. This single geographic feature changes everything, absolutely everything. According to research from Stanford University and major historians of Western migration, South Pass became the decisive corridor that transformed overland settlement from a specialized expedition into a realistic family journey. Without it, large wagon migrations to Oregon would likely have been delayed or drastically reduced. Geography shapes destiny, sometimes quietly. South Pass was known to indigenous peoples long before Americans celebrated it. Native communities had used routes through and around these mountains for generations, guided by seasonal movement, hunting and trade. Fur trappers later learned from both direct experience and indigenous knowledge, though many later popular accounts minimize that fact. That omission matters. The trail is never truly discovered from nothing. It is inherited, adapted, reused. In the early 19th century, fur trappers begin carrying increasingly detailed knowledge of Western routes back east. Among the most influential are the mountain men, a strange fraternity of traders, hunters, and wilderness specialists whose lives feel almost mythic today. You can picture one now. His coat smells of smoke and animal fat. His hands are scarred from cold and labour. Wet leather creaks when he moves. He rides alone for days, perhaps weeks, through country so immense that human presence feels temporary. Silence surrounds him, except for wind and ravens. Names like Jedediah Smith, Jim Bridger, and Thomas Fitzpatrick become central to Western exploration. These men do not create the land, of course, but they help transmit practical knowledge about routes, rivers, and passes to expanding American audiences. Research from Yale University highlights how trapper journals and expedition reports gradually reduced uncertainty about Western travel. They could not remove risk. They could make risk measurable. That is a profound difference. Fear of the unknown often exceeds fear of known danger. A dangerous river, you understand, feels different from a blank map. Blank maps terrify and inspire. Some historians still debate which expedition most decisively proved wagon feasibility through South Pass. Accounts differ because knowledge spread gradually rather than through one dramatic revelation. Some scholars emphasize trapper routes. Others point to organized expeditions and emigrant reports in the 1830s and early 1840s. No single hero solves the problem. History disappoints movies like that. Progress is cumulative, messy, collaborative, and occasionally accidental. Your ears catch another sound now. Paper maps rustling on wooden tables in frontier towns, survey notes, trail guides, hand-drawn river bends, mileage estimates, some useful, some absurdly optimistic. You can imagine a settler studying one. He traces a finger west. Missouri River, Plains, South Pass, Snake River. Oregon, simple on paper, not simple in reality. The route is roughly 2,000 miles depending on starting point and final destination. 2,000 miles today might sound like a long road trip with questionable snacks and too many gas station coffees. In the 1840s, it means months of relentless movement through unpredictable terrain. No engines, no pavement, no roadside assistance. Very inconvenient. The practical implications are enormous. A route suitable for horses or men on foot may still fail for wagons. Wagons require manageable grades, reliable water-grazing land for animals, and enough space to maneuver heavy loads. Oxen cannot teleport over cliffs despite what desperate settlers may have wished, so route selection becomes everything. Your mind drifts into a wagon yard where blacksmiths hammer iron rims onto wooden wheels. Sparks jump into the air. Hot metal hisses. The smell of charcoal and sweat hangs thick. Families preparing for Oregon are no longer asking if a route exists. They ask whether they can survive it. That is different, and more frightening, because now the dream feels reachable. Reachable dreams demand commitment. Once families believe Oregon can be reached by wagon, hesitation begins to fade. The Rockies no longer feel like an impossible wall. They become a difficult stage in a larger journey. Difficult, yes. Impossible, no. That psychological shift changes migration forever. According to historians at University of Oxford, major migration movements often accelerate not when danger disappears, but when danger becomes narratively manageable. People accept hardship once they believe others have survived it. That matters deeply. One successful journey inspires 10 more. 10 inspire hundreds. Hundreds inspire thousands. Soon, trail stories circulate with growing detail. Where to find grass, which rivers are worst, where wagons break most often, which crossings demand caution. Families collect this information obsessively. Knowledge becomes survival. A mother may memorize water intervals. A father studies axle repairs. A child learns not to wander. Even children absorb trail logic. Stay near. Listen. Do not waste water. The mountains remain ahead, but something fundamental has changed. They are no longer the end of imagination. They are part of the route. That subtle transformation unlocks the Oregon Trail. For a moment, it feels as though you stand at South Pass yourself. Wind brushes dry grass. The land rises gently beneath a vast sky. No dramatic summit announces triumph. No monumental gate declares arrival. Just openness, a passage, a possibility. That is what makes it powerful. The Rockies have not disappeared, but they can be crossed. And once Americans truly understand that the Great Migration west begins to feel inevitable, the road is clearer now. Soon wagons will follow. Thousands of them. The route now exists in the American imagination with startling clarity. Oregon is no longer only a rumour. The mountains are no longer an absolute barrier. The question shifts again, and this time it becomes deeply personal. Who goes first? Not governments, not armies, families. Ordinary families. That is one of the most remarkable truths about the Oregon Trail. The Great Migration west is not driven mainly by trained expedition leaders or hardened soldiers. It is driven by parents carrying babies, children chasing chickens through wagon yards, teenagers pretending not to be afraid, and exhausted adults trying to appear calm while quietly calculating every risk. Your mind drifts to the early 1840s. Spring mud clings to boots in frontier settlements along the western edge of the United States. Wooden fences lean, horses stamp in damp earth. Blacksmith shops ring with sharp metallic rhythm. Everywhere preparations are underway. Something is happening. A movement is forming. In 1841, one of the earliest major overland wagon migrations to Oregon begins. A relatively small group by later standards sets out west, proving that family wagon travel to Oregon is not merely theoretical. Their success matters far beyond their own journey. Success creates imitation, fast. According to research from Harvard University, early emigrant parties in the 1840s served as critical proof of concept for large-scale Western migration. Letters and first-hand reports from these travellers reduced uncertainty and encouraged larger wagon movements in following years. That phrase sounds cold, proof of concept, but behind it are human lives, messy lives. You can picture one wagon family now. A father in his 30s, shoulders worn from farm labour, a mother with tired but steady eyes, 3 children, perhaps 4, one old grandmother who insisted on coming despite everyone's objections, especially the father's. She came anyway. Naturally, the wagon itself becomes their moving world. Most emigrants use Prairie schooners, lighter versions of the heavy Conestoga wagons used for freight in the East. Despite romantic imagery, these wagons are not luxurious, not even remotely. They are cramped, dusty, uncomfortable. Suspension is practically non-existent. Every rut matters. Every rock sends jolts through wood bone and patience. People often walk beside wagons rather than ride inside because animals need every ounce of energy conserved. That surprises modern people. Many imagine constant riding. No, you walk a lot, sometimes 15 miles in a day, sometimes more, sometimes while holding child. Historians from University of California note that emigrants typically walked for much of the journey to reduce strain on draft animals. The romantic image of families comfortably seated in wagons misses the exhausting physical reality. Feet become central, boots become sacred, blisters become political, small discomforts grow enormous after weeks. Your ears catch the squeal of wooden wheels turning without perfect lubrication. Oxen breathe heavily, leather harnesses creak, wet canvas flaps in wind. The smell around a wagon train is not glamorous. Animal sweat, mud, wood smoke, wet wool, salted meat, and people. Many people. There is something strangely intimate about life on the trail. Privacy almost disappears. Families sleep near one another, cook near one another, argue near one another, and hear more about each other's digestion than anyone ever wanted. Quite a lot more. This is where emotional reality begins. Leaving home sounds bold in stories. Living this decision feels different. Many early emigrants experience waves of excitement followed by sudden dread. What have we done? That question appears often in letters and journals. For good reason. The moment of departure carries emotional weight difficult to exaggerate. Imagine a farmyard at dawn. Mist hangs low over grass. Chickens scratch near wagon wheels. The family dog seems confused by all the activity. Children feel adventure. Adults feel consequences. A mother takes one final look at the house she helped build. She touches the door frame. Her fingers pause on rough wood. Every mark carries memory. Births, winters, arguments, laughter, illness, ordinary days that suddenly feel precious. Pause there. Migration often transforms mundane objects into emotional anchors. A chair becomes memory, a stove becomes history, a fence becomes farewell. Small things hurt most. Research from Princeton University suggests that private correspondence from emigrant families often reveals emotional conflict far deeper than public pioneer narratives later admitted. Courage and grief frequently travel together. That feels true. Because bravery rarely excludes fear. It usually carries fear. Some emigrants travel in loosely organized companies for safety and cooperation. Leadership structures emerge. Wagon captains may help coordinate pace camp placement and conflict resolution. Rules matter more than newcomers expect. Very much more. Who moves first? Who guards livestock? Who repairs shared equipment? Who settles disputes? Even on the frontier, administration survives. No one escapes logistics. Historians still debate how democratic wagon governance truly was. Some emigrant groups recorded formal votes and written rules. Others operated through informal influence, strong personalities, and practical necessity. Accounts differ depending on group composition and leadership. Human nature travels west too. That means cooperation and stubbornness. Plenty of stubbornness. Children adapt faster than adults in some ways. They turn hardship into games. They race beside wagons. They collect stones, feathers, bones, and treasures that parents consider entirely unnecessary. Yet children also tire. They get sick. They cry at night. One intimate detail from trail journals appears again and again. Mothers worry constantly about shoes. Growing children wear through footwear at alarming speed. Imagine walking hundreds of miles with poorly fitted shoes while dust grinds into skin. Misery. Pure misery. A missing bootlace can ruin a day. An ill-fitting boot can ruin weeks. Your mind drifts across open prairie as one of these early wagon groups advances. Grass ripples in waves under wind. Clouds cast moving shadows across enormous distances. The scale feels overwhelming. Human beings appear tiny against this landscape. Tiny, but determined. The emotional transition comes slowly. During the first weeks, homesickness remains sharp. Then routine begins to replace shock. Wake early, feed animals, pack camp, walk, stop, cook, repair, sleep. Repeat, day after day. The rhythm becomes life, and with each mile something irreversible happens. Turning back becomes harder. Not impossible, just harder. The trail exerts psychological gravity. Distance itself becomes commitment. Once a family has travelled hundreds of miles, returning home can feel as difficult as pressing forward. That realisation changes people. Quietly. Profoundly. For a moment it feels as though evening settles around the wagons. Fires burn low. Cold soup cools in tin cups. Someone hums softly. Oxen graze nearby. Children finally sleep after endless questions. Adults stay awake longer. Listening. Thinking. Worrying. Hoping. The first wagon families have done more than move west. They've crossed a threshold in American history. They have proven ordinary people can attempt the impossible. And because they did, many more will follow. Soon far more wagons will gather. Far more families will leave. And the trail will begin to swell into something vast. Morning comes slowly over the frontier. Mist hangs low above wagon tongues and wheel rims. Dew darkens leather straps. Somewhere nearby a rooster calls with more confidence than accuracy. The camp stirs as if waking from uneasy sleep. Coffee boils in blackened pots. Children rub tired eyes. Oxen snort clouds of warm breath into the cold air. The journey is real now. Painfully real. And before any wagon rolls west, one question dominates every conversation. What do you bring? That simple question carries enormous weight. Packing for the Oregon Trail is not like preparing for a vacation or even a difficult move. You're not choosing what might be convenient. You're deciding what may keep your family alive across roughly 2,000 miles of prairie mountains. Rivers dust illness and uncertainty. Every pound matters. Every item competes. Every choice has consequences. Your mind drifts into a farmyard in Missouri during spring departure season. The yard is cluttered with piles of household goods. Chairs, quilts, iron cookware, buckets, crates, tools, clothing bundles, barrels of flour. Children keep wandering too close to the wagon while adults repeatedly move them away. Again, and again, and again. Tension builds because families quickly discover an unpleasant truth. The wagon always feels smaller than expected, much smaller. A prairie schooner may look sturdy, but usable space disappears with shocking speed once food tools, spare parts, bedding, and basic survival equipment are loaded. Luxury disappears first. Then sentiment. Then denial. According to research from University of Chicago, emigrant guidebooks commonly recommended limiting wagon loads to roughly 2,000 pounds, though actual loads varied. Overloading increased axle failure, slowed travel, and exhausted animals long before the mountains. Too much weight breaks everything. Not immediately. Eventually. That makes packing emotionally brutal. Families must sort their lives into harsh categories: essential, useful, sentimental, impossible. That last category hurts. You can picture a mother standing beside household goods laid out on blankets. Her hands move slowly across familiar objects. A cast iron pan stays. Heavy, yes, but essential. Extra dishes go. Decorative items go. Furniture goes. Books. Now that becomes complicated. Books weigh more than Hope likes to admit. Some families bring a Bible, a family record book, perhaps one cherished volume of poems or sermons. Most cannot justify much more. Paper maps, however, stay, always. Paper means direction. Direction means survival. Your ears catch the sound of arguments now, not angry arguments usually, exhausted ones, practical ones. Do we really need this chest? Can we leave the mirror? What about the sewing frame? Do we need 3 blankets? 3 blankets in mountain cold. Yes? Probably yes. Historians from Yale University note that women often played central roles in trail provisioning. particularly in food planning, textile preparation, medicine storage, and clothing repair. Public pioneer mythology often glorified male leadership while underestimating domestic logistics. A dangerous mistake. Domestic logistics keep people alive. Food planning becomes obsessive. Guidebooks experienced travelers and merchants offer long supply lists. Flour dominates, hundreds of pounds of it. Then bacon or salt pork beans, rice-dried fruit, coffee, sugar, salt-lard hard biscuits, and sometimes preserved butter. Monotony is guaranteed. Variety is not. A typical family may carry months of food hoping hunting or trading supplement supplies. Sometimes it does. Sometimes not. Very much not. One intimate detail appears repeatedly in emigrant diaries. Mothers worry about yeast and bread quality. Fresh bread represents comfort, routine, and dignity, but trail conditions punish baking. Flour gets damp, sourdough fails, firewood varies, weather interferes. Even bread becomes uncertain. That matters emotionally. Because familiar food anchors identity, lose routine and stress grows faster. Your mind drifts toward tools, axes, shovels, rope, chains, hammers, spare wagon tongues, wheel grease, nails, needles, knives, gunpowder and firearms for hunting or defense, buckets and barrels for water. The sheer practicality feels relentless. Nothing glamorous, everything necessary. Research from Stanford University emphasizes that wagon maintenance supplies were often as important as food reserves. Mechanical failure far from assistance could rapidly become life-threatening. That sounds obvious now. On the trail it becomes terrifying. A broken axle is not an inconvenience. It is crisis. A torn harness matters. A lost chain matters. A missing bolt matters. Children rarely understand this at first. Their priorities remain charmingly different. A boy insists on bringing carved wooden toys. A girl hides a doll inside bedding. Another child sneaks stones or feathers into storage crates because children across all centuries excel at collecting unnecessary treasures. Parents discover them later, usually with sighs, sometimes with reluctant smiles. Historians still debate how closely emigrants followed published supply lists. Surviving inventories suggest wide variation. Wealthier families carried more reserves. Poorer emigrants gambled harder. Some lists reflected ideal preparation rather than realistic capacity. That sounds familiar? Advice is easy. Reality is cramped. Animals require equal attention. Choosing draft animals becomes one of the most important decisions families make. Many newcomers assume horses are best because horses are faster. Speed sounds appealing. Speed feels modern. But veterans often recommend oxen, not glamorous, extremely useful. Oxen are slower but stronger, cheaper, and generally more durable under heavy loads. They tolerate rough forage better and handle long strain more reliably. They are stubborn, certainly, but dependable. Usually, according to historians from Harvard University, oxen became the preferred draft animal for many Oregon Trail emigrants because reliability mattered more than speed during prolonged overland migration. That practical wisdom saves lives. It also bruises expectations, because the trail rewards patience, not ambition. Rush too fast and animals weaken. Animals weaken and everything slows, or stops. Your ears pick up the creak of loaded wheels as final weight settles into the wagon. Canvas stretches over bent wooden hoops. The wagon now looks complete, and impossibly fragile. A whole life reduced to one rolling structure. Pause there. There is something deeply human in this image. Families compress years of memory into a movable shell. Their possessions no longer define comfort or status. They define survival. A quilt becomes insulation. A pot becomes dinner. A needle becomes repair. A Bible becomes continuity. A child's doll becomes emotional rescue after terrible days. Small objects matter, more than weight charts can measure. For a moment it feels as though departure approaches. The piles in the yard are smaller now, too small. Everything left behind sits in painful silence. Furniture sold, keepsakes abandoned, heirlooms gifted to relatives. A mother touches a rocking chair one last time. It stays. She leaves. That emotional transition lands quietly. The journey west begins long before the first wheel turns. It begins in sacrifice, in sorting, in choosing, in letting go. And once enough has been left behind, only essentials remain. Or what people hope are essentials. Soon the wagons will roll. Soon there will be no more packing. Only moving, only distance, only the trail. At last the waiting ends. The wagon is packed. Flour barrels are tied down. Harness straps are checked, then checked again, because somehow straps always deserve one more inspection. Children have been counted, recounted, and warned not to wander. Coffee has been swallowed while still too hot. Goodbyes have stretched longer than expected. Now comes the hardest moment. Leaving. Not preparing to leave. Actually leaving. Your mind drifts to a spring morning in Missouri near one of the famous jumping-off points for the Oregon Trail. Towns such as Independence, St. Joseph, and Westport have become crowded staging grounds for emigrants heading west. Streets that normally feel busy now feel chaotic. Wagons everywhere. Animals everywhere. People everywhere. The sound is overwhelming. Wooden wheels grind through mud, horses whinny, oxen grunt with heavy indifference. Blacksmith hammers ring sharply through cool morning air. Traders shout prices for rope flour bacon, wheel grease and spare iron fittings. Babies cry, dogs bark. Someone is already arguing about costs. Naturally, there is always arguing about costs. According to research from University of California, Independence became one of the most important launching points for overland emigrants during the 1840s because of its river access supply infrastructure and connection to Western trade routes. That infrastructure matters because the final days before departure are rarely peaceful. They are frantic. Even well-prepared families discover missing items. A barrel leaks, a wheel rim needs repair, flour costs more than expected, one ox suddenly appears less healthy, a wagon cover tears in the wind. Small problems multiply. Fast. Your ears catch the rustle of paper as guidebooks are unfolded one last time. Mileage charts, river crossings, fort locations, advice from men who survived the route, advice from men who merely claim they survived the route. Frontier expertise is not always easy to verify. Some advice is priceless. Some is nonsense. One merchant swears a certain axle grease lasts twice as long. Another insists a different route saves time. A third confidently predicts mild weather across the plains. Confidence is cheap. Reality is expensive. Families sleep poorly in these final days. Excitement mixes with dread. The decision is made, yet emotional certainty rarely follows commitment. Some emigrants feel sudden panic as departure becomes unavoidable. What if we fail? What if someone dies? What if home was enough? Those questions arrive uninvited. They linger. Historians from Princeton University note that emigrant diaries often reveal a sharp psychological shift at departure, when abstract dreams of Oregon collided with the irreversible reality of separation. Irreversible. That word lands heavily. Because leaving is not merely travel, it is rupture. You can picture the farewell scene now. Relatives gather near wagons. Some came to help. Some came only to say goodbye. Many will never see one another again, though no one wants to say that aloud. A brother grips another brother's hand too long. A mother hugs grown children like they're 5 years old again. An old father says very little. Sometimes silence says everything. One intimate detail appears repeatedly in personal letters. Many emigrants saved locks of hair from loved ones before leaving. Such keepsakes were small, portable, and deeply personal. A strange object, and precious. A piece of someone carried west. Pause there. History often feels grand from a distance, but grief is usually tiny enough to fit in a pocket, a ribbon, a letter, a lock of hair, a child's drawing. These things travel because love refuses to stay behind. At last the wagons begin moving. Slowly, painfully slowly, the first yards feel almost absurd. After months of planning, the Great Migration begins at walking speed. Wheels sink into soft ground. Drivers call commands to oxen. Children try to wave and walk at the same time. The town recedes, home recedes, everything familiar begins shrinking behind you. Your mind drifts beside the wagon as the settlement noise fades. The air changes. Open prairie stretches ahead in rolling green waves. Wind moves across grass like water over a vast invisible sea. Birds circle high above. The horizon feels impossibly distant. The scale shocks newcomers, even now, especially now. The psychological effect of the prairie is powerful. Settlers from wooded eastern states are often unprepared for such openness. There are fewer visual boundaries, fewer trees, less shelter, sky dominates everything. So much sky. Research from University of Chicago suggests that first impressions of the Great Plains vary dramatically. Some emigrants described awe and beauty. Others described exposure and unease. Both can be true. Beauty does not always comfort. Sometimes beauty intimidates. Children adapt faster, as children often do. They turn strange landscapes into games. They race wagon shadows. They point at birds. They ask endless questions. How far today? When do we stop? Are there bears? Are we in Oregon yet? No. Very much no. Adults laugh despite exhaustion. That laughter matters. Because morale is a survival tool. The first days on the trail are often deceptively manageable. Grass is good, water is relatively accessible, supplies are fresh. Bodies still carry strength from settled life. Some families begin feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe this will not be so bad. Dangerous thought. Very dangerous. Experienced travellers know the trail teaches humility. Early comfort means little. Hardship waits ahead in rivers, mountains, illness, weather and fatigue. But for now, optimism lives. And optimism moves wagons. Historians still debate how much emigrants truly understood the risks before departure. Some journals suggest remarkable awareness. Others reveal shocking naivety. No clear consensus exists because preparation varied widely across social class education and access to reliable information. Knowledge helps, but only so much. No guidebook fully prepares you for months of trail life. Not really. Your ears pick up the rhythmic sounds that will soon define existence. Wheel creak, harness strain, boot steps, ox breath, canvas flap, repeating mechanical lullaby. Hour after hour, day after day, the rhythm becomes hypnotic, almost soothing, until something breaks. For a moment it feels as though evening arrives on the first true camp. Wagons circle loosely or line up depending on terrain and preference. Fires are lit. Bacon sizzles. Coffee darkens tin cups. Smoke rises into cooling air. Exhaustion settles in. So does realization. There is no easy return now. The trail has claimed them. The west lies ahead. Home lies behind. And somewhere beyond thousands of miles, Oregon waits. Morning returns with familiar sounds now. Not the sounds of home, but the sounds of the trail. Canvas snapping in wind. Oxen shifting their weight before harnessing. Iron chains clinking against wooden yokes. Someone coughing near a dying campfire. Someone else trying with heroic optimism to make breakfast taste better than it actually does. It rarely works. Trail food has limits. And seasoning is not a frontier luxury most families can spare. The wagons move again. They keep moving. Soon the first excitement of departure begins to fade, replaced by something far more powerful. Routine. The Oregon Trail is not constant drama. That surprises many people. Popular memory loves river disasters, mountain storms, and moments of extreme danger. Those moments matter, of course, but much of trail life is repetitive, physical, and strangely ordinary. You wake. You pack. You walk. You stop. You cook. You sleep. Then again, and again, and again. This repetition shapes body and mind. Days begin early, often before sunrise. Camp stirs in cold grey light while dew clings to grass and wagon wheels. Fires are rekindled from embers. Coffee brews if supplies allow. Children are shaken awake with gentle patience or less gentle urgency. Usually less gentle. According to research from Harvard University, most wagon trains travelled roughly 10 to 20 miles per day depending on terrain, weather, animal condition and delays. Progress was steady rather than fast, and discipline mattered more than speed. That becomes a difficult lesson. Many newcomers want speed. The trail rewards endurance. Move too quickly and oxen weaken. Push animals too hard and wheels break more often. Burn energy early and later hardship becomes catastrophic. Experienced emigrants understand this. Pace matters. Patience matters. Boredom matters too. Yes, boredom. Mind drifts beside a wagon on a long prairie afternoon. Grass stretches endlessly in every direction. Wind ripples through it like waves on water. Clouds crawl across a vast sky. Hour after hour the view changes only slightly. The monotony can feel surreal, beautiful, and exhausting. Historians from Yale University note that many emigrant diaries reveal an unexpected psychological challenge: monotony. Endless walking and repetitive scenery created mental fatigue long before major physical crises appeared. That feels deeply human. Adventure sounds thrilling from a distance. In practice, adventure often includes sore feet and repetitive scenery. Lots of repetitive scenery. Children respond differently. Some thrive in motion. They invent games with sticks, shadows, or stones. They race wagon tracks. They count buffalo bones. They chase grasshoppers until a parent calls them back. Again, stay close. Always stay close. Because the trail punishes carelessness. Wagons are heavy, visibility is limited, and accidents happen quickly. One intimate detail from emigrant accounts appears repeatedly. Parents lived in constant fear of children slipping beneath wagon wheels, a chilling thought, and never far from mind. Mothers watch constantly. Fathers glance back again and again while walking beside teams. Even older siblings become part-time guardians whether they like it or not. Family roles change. Everyone works, even children. Some gather buffalo chips for fuel when wood is scarce. That detail often surprises modern listeners. Yes, dried buffalo dung. Fuel, not glamorous, but highly useful on treeless plains. When dried under sun, it burns surprisingly well and becomes essential where firewood is scarce. Practical reality wins, every time. Research from University of Chicago confirms that buffalo chips were commonly collected and used by overland travelers as cooking fuel across the plains, especially in areas with limited timber. History is wonderfully humbling. Empires may rise and fall. Dinner still needs fire. Your ears catch the creak of harness leather rubbing against animal shoulders. Oxen dominate the pace of life. Their movement determines human movement. Their health determines family survival. Settlers quickly learn to read animal behavior with unusual sensitivity. Is that limp worse today? Why is that ox eating less? Is the harness rubbing skin raw? These questions matter enormously. Animals are not equipment. They are survival. A family may lose precious time nursing exhausted draft animals. Some even walk farther than necessary to spare them additional strain. Blisters, strained muscles, cracked hooves, and dehydration threaten constant progress. Historians still debate whether inexperienced emigrants consistently underestimated animal care demands. Some scholars argue guidebooks warned sufficiently. Others suggest many settlers intellectually understood the risks, but emotionally failed to grasp daily strain until too late. Knowing is not the same as feeling. Never is. Your mind drifts toward midday. Heat rises from earth. Dust begins to cling to skin and clothing. Shirts stick with sweat, lips dry. Water tastes warmer by the hour. The smell of wet leather from morning has faded into dust and animal musk. Trail dirt gets everywhere. Hair, food, blankets, teeth, especially teeth. Meals become simple and functional. Noon stops are brief. Perhaps cold bread bacon, dried fruit, or leftover beans. Nothing elaborate. No one wants to unpack too much during travel hours. Efficiency becomes culture. Small comforts shrink. Even conversation changes. Early on, families talk often about Oregon, about land claims, about dreams, about houses not yet built. But as routine deepens, conversation narrows. How much flour remains? Where is the missing cup? Who repaired the wheel pin? Did anyone see the rope? Practical talk dominates. Fatigue does that. It strips away abstraction. Pause for a moment. This emotional transition matters. The trail slowly reshapes identity. People who left home as farmers, merchants, craftsmen, or labourers become something new. Travellers, survivors, trail people. Their world narrows to distance, weather, food, animals, and camp. Everything else fades, at least temporarily, yet small moments of beauty survive. A child finds wildflowers near a creek. Evening light turns prairie gold. A flock of birds suddenly rises from grass with explosive motion. Night skies reveal stars in staggering number. So many stars, almost too many. One emigrant later described the plain sky as so immense it made human worries feel strangely small. That observation resonates with modern environmental historians at Princeton University who note that frontier landscapes often triggered profound emotional reflection in personal journals. Vastness changes thought, sometimes gently, sometimes deeply. For a moment it feels as though dusk settles across camp. Wagons stop, harnesses loosen, fires begin, smoke rises into cooling air, children finally stop moving. Mostly. Soup simmers, boots come off, feet ache badly. One intimate ritual appears again and again in diaries. People inspect feet every evening, blisters are cleaned, socks dried, shoes repaired. Small wounds receive outsized attention. Because tomorrow demands walking again. Always again. The endless prairie now teaches its first great lesson. Survival is not only about heroism during crisis, it is about endurance through ordinary days, ordinary hardship, ordinary fatigue, ordinary persistence. And while the plains still seem generous, danger waits ahead. Rivers, illness, heat, loss. But for now, the wagons keep rolling through grass, and sky learning the rhythm that will carry them west. The rhythm of the trail settles so deeply into your body that time begins to blur. One morning resembles the next. One campfire resembles the last. The steady creak of wheels becomes almost hypnotic and a rough wooden heartbeat moving west across the plains. Then the land reminds you of something important. Routine can end instantly, usually with water. Rivers become the first great terror of the Oregon Trail. On a map, a river looks harmless enough. Just a blue line crossing the route. Simple. Cross here, continue west. Maps are wonderfully confident in ways reality rarely supports. Water disagrees. Strongly. Your mind drifts toward a broad river crossing somewhere on the plains. Morning mist hangs above dark water. Mud sucks at boots near the bank. The current looks calm from a distance, almost polite. Up close it feels different. The surface hides force. Logs drift past. Water curls around rocks with quiet strength. Everyone goes silent. Even children. They sense tension, because everyone understands the stakes. A bad crossing can destroy weeks of progress in minutes. Wagons tip. Supplies soak. Animals panic. People disappear beneath current. Water does not care about planning. Not at all. According to research from Stanford University, river crossings ranked among the most feared hazards on the Oregon Trail because they combined mechanical risk animal unpredictability and deadly environmental uncertainty. That combination is brutal. Too many variables, too little control. Some rivers are shallow enough to ford. That means guiding wagons directly through water, hoping depth remains manageable and the riverbed stays firm. Easier said than done. Much easier. Drivers inspect the crossing first. Men wade in, sometimes waist-deep, testing current and bottom conditions. Mud is dangerous. Sand can trap wheels. Hidden holes can overturn wagons. One bad step matters. Very much. Your ears catch shouted instructions across the bank. Remove extra weight, tighten coverings, secure loose items, double-check wheel hubs, calm the animals, try to remain calm yourself. Try being the important word. Oxen sense human stress quickly. Nervous handlers create nervous teams. Nervous teams make terrible decisions. Horses are faster but more prone to panic. Oxen are slower and stubborn, yet often steadier in water. Stubborn helps, sometimes a lot. Historians from University of California note that emigrants frequently debated crossing methods at major rivers, balancing speed, safety, weather conditions, and available ferries. Debate sounds civilized. In practice, it can become tense. Very tense. Should we cross now? Wait until morning? Pay for a ferry? Build a raft? Each choice costs something. Time, money, risk. Your mind settles beside one family waiting at the riverbank. The mother holds a toddler close. The child does not understand why everyone suddenly looks serious. A boy of 10 tries to appear brave while staring too long at the current. The father checks the wagon cover again, though he already checked it twice. Then once more, because doing something feels better than waiting. An intimate detail from trail diaries appears repeatedly during crossings. Families often wrapped valuables inside oilcloth or sealed them in barrels to protect them from water. Important papers, family Bibles, money letters, and keepsakes receive special attention. Not just food, memory too. Because drowning does not only destroy supplies, it can erase identity. Marriage records, birth records, letters from home, photographs in later years. Tiny objects that anchor memory. Pause there. Survival includes preserving meaning, not merely breathing. At some crossings, ferries operate. These are flatboats or platforms designed to carry wagons across for a fee. Ferries reduce risk but introduce new problems. Costs can be steep. Delays grow long. Crowds build. And not all ferries inspire confidence. Some look alarming. Very alarming. A half-rotten ferry loaded with wagons offers its own spiritual experience. Historians still debate how often emigrants underestimated crossing dangers despite warnings. Some journals show careful caution. Others reveal impatience over confidence or pressure from schedules. Accounts differ, but human impatience appears remarkably consistent. That feels timeless. People dislike waiting, even when waiting saves lives. At last the crossing begins. The wagon enters water, slowly, too slowly for comfort. Cold water rises against wheels. Mud shifts beneath hooves. Oxen lean into harnesses with deep muscular strain. The wagon creaks ominously. Every sound feels amplified. Splashing, harness tension, shouted commands. Then the current pushes, harder than expected. The wagon drifts sideways. Just slightly, but enough to trigger panic. Children cry out. Someone shouts louder. The driver fights to correct angle. Water now presses against axle height. One barrel shifts inside the wagon. A loose pan clatters. That sound feels absurdly loud. Research from Harvard University indicates that mechanical instability during crossings often cause secondary failures where minor cargo shifts worsened balance and increased rollover risk. Small movement, huge consequence. That is river logic. Your heart slows only when the wagon reaches shallower water near the far bank. Wheels grip firmer ground, oxen surge forward. Mud sucks at the rear wheels one final time before releasing. Then, solid earth. Relief hits like exhaustion. The family made it. This time. Not every family does. That quiet truth lingers over every crossing. Graves near major rivers remind emigrants that success is never guaranteed. Sometimes markers are simple. Wood posts, rough stones. Names scratched quickly. Sometimes no marker at all. Only memory. Emotional transitions on the trail often arrive in strange ways. A terrifying crossing ends and laughter suddenly breaks out. Nervous laughter. Relief laughter. Slightly hysterical laughter. Still laughter. It helps, because the body needs release. Children recover fastest. Minutes after terror, they may already be chasing frogs or examining strange stones by the bank. Children are astonishing and confusing. Adults remain shaken longer. Wet boots squish. Hands tremble while unloading supplies. Mothers check every child repeatedly. Fathers pretend calm while replaying near disasters in silence. Could that have gone worse? Yes, very easily. Your mind drifts toward evening camp after a difficult crossing. Wet clothing hangs to dry, blankets are spread on wagon tongues, firewood crackles, damp wool gives off a sour, earthy smell, smoke clings to everything. Soup tastes better tonight, even plain soup, because relief improves flavour. One physically grounded truth becomes clear now. The trail is teaching everyone humility. Skill matters, planning matters, experience matters. Nature still decides much, water especially. For a moment it feels as though darkness settles around camp. River sounds continue nearby, softer now, almost soothing. Frogs call from reeds, wind moves through grass. Children sleep deeply after emotional exhaustion. Adults stay awake, listening, thinking. The plains still stretch ahead, but the emigrants now understand something essential. The Oregon Trail is not only distance, it is obstacles. Each one demands respect, and beyond rivers an even quieter danger is approaching, invisible, carried in water waste and human contact. Disease. The river is behind you now, but its tension lingers in the body. Muscles remain tight. Sleep comes, though not easily. The camp quiets beneath stars, and for a few precious hours the wagon train feels almost peaceful. Then morning comes, and something feels wrong. At first it is subtle. One traveller rises slower than usual. Another skips breakfast. Someone complains of stomach pain. A child says a parent looks pale. No one panics yet. The trail is exhausting. People feel weak sometimes. That seems normal, until it is not. The Oregon Trail teaches a brutal lesson about danger. Not every threat announces itself with dramatic weather or violent rivers. Some arrive silently. No thunder, no warning, no visible enemy. Just illness. And by the time everyone understands what is happening, fear spreads faster than facts. Your mind drifts across the plains during the peak migration years of the late 1840s and early 1850s. Dust hangs in hot air. Water sources shrink under summer heat. Camps grow crowded near popular crossings and resting points. Human waste accumulates. Water contamination becomes increasingly likely. This is fertile ground for disaster, especially cholera. One word, terrifying meaning. According to research from Harvard University and major historians of 19th century medicine, cholera became one of the deadliest diseases on Western emigrant trails, particularly during the massive migration years after 1849. That timing matters, because the trail is changing. More people means more congestion. More congestion means more contamination, and cholera thrives in contaminated water and poor sanitation, though emigrants do not yet fully understand germ theory. Most people in the mid-19th century still lack modern scientific knowledge about microbial disease transmission. They see patterns, they form theories, but the invisible mechanisms remain unknown. That ignorance makes everything worse. Much worse. Historians from University of Chicago note that most overland migrants recognized cholera as deadly but misunderstood how it spread. Many blamed bad air, weather shifts, exhaustion, or mysterious environmental influences. That misunderstanding feels tragic, because the real danger is often in the water they drink. Water that looks clean, water that kills. Your ears catch the sound of worried voices around a wagon. Someone is sick, badly sick. Severe cramps, vomiting, weakness, dehydration. The decline can be frighteningly fast. Hours, not days. That speed terrifies everyone. A healthy person walking beside a wagon in the morning might collapse by evening. Families quickly learn this horrifying truth. The trail does not always grant time for preparation or goodbye. Sometimes loss is sudden, brutally sudden. You can picture a mother kneeling beside her husband under wagon shade. Sweat beads across his forehead despite dry heat. His skin looks grey. She offers water with trembling hands. He tries to speak but struggles. Children stand nearby, confused by adult fear. They know something is wrong. They do not yet understand how wrong. One intimate detail from trail journals appears often in accounts of illness. Parents tried to hide panic from children even while fearing the worst. A soft voice, A steady hand, a shaking heart. That quiet courage matters. Pause here. The emotional burden of trail disease differs from physical danger. River crossings end, storms pass, illness lingers inside camp, reshaping every interaction. Suddenly, every shared cup feels suspicious. Every cough draws attention. Every stomachache triggers dread. Is this nothing? Or the beginning? That uncertainty exhausts people. Research from Yale University suggests that fear of disease on emigrant trails often causes psychological strain beyond actual infection numbers because uncertainty magnified every symptom. That feels deeply familiar. Humans fear invisible threats intensely, especially when knowledge is incomplete. Trail medicine remains limited. Families carry medical kits with varying usefulness. Laudanum, calomel, castor oil, herbs, bandages, salves. Some treatments provide comfort, others are ineffective. Some may worsen dehydration. Good intentions do not guarantee good medicine. Never have. Some wagon trains include doctors. Many do not. Even trained doctors face severe limitations. Without clean water, sterile tools, modern rehydration therapy or antibiotics, treatment options remain painfully restricted. Sometimes all anyone can do is wait and hope. Historians still debate cholera mortality estimates on overland trails because records remain incomplete. Some graves were unmarked. Some deaths were poorly documented. Contemporary accounts sometimes exaggerated outbreaks while others underreported them. Numbers blur. Human loss does not. Your mind drifts along the trail where graves begin appearing with disturbing frequency during severe outbreak years. Fresh earth mounds rise near wagon ruts. Sometimes a simple wooden marker stands above them. Sometimes names are carved. Sometimes only initials. Sometimes nothing. Just earth. One of the cruelest realities of trail burial is speed. The wagon train cannot stop for long. Food animals, weather and distance impose relentless pressure. Families often bury loved ones, quickly say brief prayers and continue west. Continue. Imagine that. You bury someone you love in unfamiliar soil, then walk. The same day. That emotional reality is almost unbearable, and yet it happened repeatedly. According to historians at Princeton University, many emigrants later wrote that rapid burial and forced onward movement created lasting psychological trauma, especially for parents who lost children. That word feels modern. Trauma. The suffering itself is not modern. Only the vocabulary changes. Your ears catch another quiet sound. Shovels cutting dry soil. Wind moving grass around mourners. Someone reciting prayer through tears. Children standing unusually still. No one wants to leave, but they must. That tension creates guilt. Survivors struggle with unbearable questions. Should we have waited longer? Should we have stopped sooner? Could we have prevented this? Those questions echo for years, often without answers. Children remain especially vulnerable to dehydration and disease, yet adults are hardly safe. Exhaustion, heat, poor diet, and stress weaken everyone. Even healthy bodies lose resilience after months of travel. The trail wears people down, gradually, relentlessly, and still life continues around illness in strange ways. Wagons move, fires burn, bread bakes, oxen graze. Children laugh at something ridiculous. Human life refuses total surrender to grief. That resilience feels almost impossible, yet deeply real. For a moment it feels as though evening settles over a quieter camp than usual. Conversation stays subdued. Coffee cools untouched in tin cups. Smoke rises into dim orange light. No one speaks loudly. Everyone is thinking about water, about health, about tomorrow. One physically grounded truth has become impossible to ignore. Survival on the Oregon Trail depends not only on courage or strength, it depends on invisible systems people barely understand. Clean water, waste management, rest, nutrition, small things, massive consequences. The emigrants now know the trail holds dangers beyond sight. That knowledge changes them. They become more cautious around camps, streams, and crowded crossings. But danger still surrounds them, and as they move farther west, another challenge approaches. Not invisible this time. Human. Complex. Unpredictable. The people who already know this land. The graves fade behind the wagon train, though not from memory. Loss travels with people. It settles into silence, into altered routines, into empty spaces beside campfires where someone used to sit. The trail keeps moving because it always does, but the emigrants are no longer quite the same. Grief changes perception, so does fear. And now another source of uncertainty begins to shape every conversation around the campfires. The people already living here. By the time emigrants reach deeper sections of the trail, they pass through lands inhabited by many indigenous nations whose histories on these landscapes stretch back generations. This includes peoples such as the Lakota people, Pawnee people, Shoshone people, Nez Perce, and many others. These communities are not background scenery. They are central to the story. That matters deeply, because later popular mythology often framed the Oregon Trail as a simple journey through empty wilderness filled with constant threat from hostile tribes. That narrative is dramatic, memorable, and often misleading. Reality is far more complex, much more human. According to research from University of California and leading historians of Western migration, most interactions between Oregon Trail emigrants and indigenous communities involve trade observation negotiation or cautious coexistence rather than sustained violent conflict. That may surprise some listeners. Hollywood trained expectations differently. Reality rarely follows movie logic. Your mind drifts toward a wagon camp near a river crossing. Evening light glows amber across grass. Smoke rises from cook fires. Children settle near wagons. Then figures appear on horseback in the distance. Conversation stops instantly. Every eye turns. The riders approach slowly, calmly, not rushing, just watching. The emotional tension becomes immediate. Many emigrants arrive carrying powerful fears shaped by rumor exaggeration and frontier storytelling. Some have heard warnings of raids or attacks. Some expect danger at every encounter. Others are simply uncertain. Uncertainty alone can feel threatening, especially under stress. Your ears catch the nervous whisper of settlers. How many are there? What do they want? Should we arm ourselves? Those questions reveal more about emigrant psychology than about the approaching riders. Fear fills gaps, quickly. Historians from Yale University note that many settler accounts exaggerated danger because anxiety shaped perception, while later retellings amplified dramatic encounters and minimized ordinary cooperation. That distortion matters, because many trail encounters were practical. Trade often came first. Very often, indigenous traders sometimes approached emigrants offering horses fish tools, moccasins, berries, roots, or local knowledge. In exchange, emigrants offered cloth metal goods, tobacco, beads, knives, or food. Trade created contact. Contact created complexity, not trust necessarily, but interaction. You can picture one exchange now. A settler father stands near his wagon holding a tin cup and folded cloth. Nearby, a native trader studies the goods with calm concentration. No shared fluent language exists, so gestures matter, expressions matter, tone matters. Human communication simplifies. Point, offer. Wait, evaluate. An intimate detail from emigrant journals appears repeatedly. Many settlers quickly recognize the value of moccasins. Leather shoes wore out rapidly on the trail, while locally made moccasins often prove softer and more practical for walking. Feet matter again. Always feet. Practical need often overcame prejudice, at least temporarily. A settler who feared unfamiliar people might still eagerly trade for better footwear, fresh fish, or critical guidance about water sources. Survival creates strange alliances and necessary humility. Research from Harvard University suggests that indigenous knowledge of terrain, seasonal conditions, and river behavior frequently aided emigrants, even when later pioneer narratives undercredited that assistance. That undercrediting is important to acknowledge. The trail did not operate independently of indigenous knowledge. Far from it. Many settlers benefited from information they barely understood they were receiving. Still, tension remained real. Wagon trains brought environmental pressure, disease, disrupted hunting grounds, and growing political consequences. Indigenous communities understood that increasing migration was not neutral. More wagons meant change, big change, often dangerous change. Historians still debate how rapidly different native nations perceived the long-term threat posed by Oregon migration. Some communities recognized early strategic implications. Others viewed initial emigrant flows through existing frameworks of trade diplomacy or transient passage. Accounts differ widely by region and circumstance. That makes sense. There was no single indigenous perspective, only perspectives. Plural, human. Your mind drifts farther west where cultural misunderstandings deepen. A gesture intended as friendly by one group may confuse another. Concepts of ownership differ. Expectations around gifts, trade, grazing rights, and livestock management can clash. Small misunderstandings escalate, sometimes fast. Imagine exhausted emigrants allowing cattle to graze near valuable native food plants or seasonal grounds without understanding the significance. From one perspective, animals are merely feeding. From another, damage is occurring. Conflict can begin quietly, not always dramatically. Your ears catch another sound, children laughing. That matters too, because children often cross social barriers faster than adults. Emigrant children sometimes watched native children with equal parts curiosity and fascination. They noticed clothing horses, hairstyles, games. Difference felt real. So did shared childhood. Children observe before ideology hardens. Pause there. This emotional truth deserves attention. Fear and curiosity often coexist. Settlers could feel grateful for assistance while still carrying prejudice. Indigenous communities could trade peacefully while remaining deeply suspicious of long-term consequences. Contradiction lives everywhere, especially on frontiers. Not every encounter ends well. Theft accusations occur, livestock disputes occur, panic leads to bad decisions, armed posturing increases danger. Sometimes isolated violence erupts through large-scale attacks on Oregon Trail wagon trains were less common than popular myth suggests. That distinction matters. Violence existed. Constant warfare did not. Research from Stanford University indicates that disease accidents and environmental hazards killed far more Oregon Trail emigrants than armed conflict with native peoples. The biggest threats were often non-human. That fact often surprises modern audiences, yet it aligns with historical evidence. As migration intensifies through the 1840s and 1850s, however, the cumulative impact grows. More wagons carve deeper ruts. More livestock consumes grass. More settlements reshape political power. What begins as passage gradually contributes to colonization. That word carries weight. It should. Because for indigenous nations, the Oregon Trail is not merely a route of opportunity for settlers. It is part of a massive transformation that threatens sovereignty, land lifeways, and survival. Two truths coexist. Settlers seek better lives. Their movement harms others. History often refuses simple heroes, or simple villains. For a moment, it feels as though night settles over camp. Firelight flickers against wagon canvas. Somewhere in darkness, distant horses move. Wind carries smoke and cool air across the prairie. People speak more quietly tonight. Some fears have softened. Some have deepened. The emigrants now understand something essential. This land is inhabited, known, remembered, and every mile west carries them deeper into worlds that existed long before their arrival. Ahead the plains continue, so do heat and distance, and soon summer itself will become an enemy. The trail stretches onward beneath an enormous summer sky. By now the wagon train has learned many lessons. Rivers demand respect. Disease hides in ordinary water. Human encounters are more complex than rumour suggested. Yet the plains still have another test waiting, one that does not arrive all at once. It builds slowly, hour by hour, day by day. Heat. At first, summer feels generous. Morning air remains cool. Sunlight turns the grasslands golden. Wind moves gently over the prairie, and for brief hours the world almost feels peaceful. But by midday the atmosphere changes. The same open sky that once inspired awe now becomes an unblinking furnace. Shade disappears. Mercy thins. Everything bakes. Your mind drifts beside a wagon during a July afternoon somewhere across the central plains. The sun sits high and merciless. Heat shimmers above the earth. Dust rises from every wheel and hoof, hanging in the air like fine powder. It clings to skin, lips, and eyelashes. Dust gets everywhere. Again. Always. The physical sensation becomes relentless. Shirts stick with sweat. Hands grow slick on leather reins. Lips crack. Tongues dry. Water barrels warm under direct sun until drinking feels less refreshing than necessary. Even breathing feels dusty. And the wind changes too. Hot wind, dry wind, wind that offers movement without relief. According to research from University of Chicago, summer heat across the Great Plains created severe dehydration stress for both emigrants and livestock, particularly when water access became less predictable between river systems. That stress compounds, subtly at first, dangerously later. Your ears catch the laboured breathing of oxen. Animals suffer under heat just as people do, sometimes more. Their massive bodies pull heavy loads over uneven ground for hours at a time. Heat slows them. Shoulders strain harder. Hooves strike drier, harder soil. Every step costs more. The wagon pace drops. Not dramatically, just enough to matter. Families begin watching water with obsessive attention. How much remains in the barrel? How far until the next reliable source can this creek be trusted? Is that distant shimmer water or mirage? The mind plays tricks, especially in heat. Historians from Harvard University note that emigrant journals frequently describe intense psychological stress around water scarcity, even before true emergency conditions developed. That makes sense. Fear often begins before crisis. The possibility of thirst alone changes behaviour. Conversations narrow. People speak less. Energy becomes precious. Even arguments lose momentum under severe heat. Mostly, though families still manage occasional disagreements. Human consistency is remarkable. One intimate detail from trail diaries appears often in summer accounts. Mothers worried constantly about children drinking too quickly at stops, then becoming sick from overconsumption after long thirst. A difficult balance. Too little water hurts. Too much too fast can also cause problems. Parenting on the trail becomes a constant negotiation between need and caution. Your mind drifts farther west into buffalo country. Soon the landscape changes in another dramatic way. Great herds appear. Sometimes distant dark bands near the horizon, sometimes closer, moving with astonishing collective force. Buffalo. Thousands. Sometimes tens of thousands. The sight can feel unreal, like the earth itself moving. Research from Yale University and environmental historians confirms that 19th century emigrants frequently encountered enormous buffalo herds on the plains, especially during peak migration corridors. The sensory impact is extraordinary. Dust clouds rise from pounding hooves, low grunts ripple across the air, the smell arrives too, animal musk, earth, dry grass, living mass. Children stare in awe. Adults feel mixed emotions, wonder, opportunity, concern, because buffalo are both blessing and hazard. Fresh meat can supplement monotonous food supplies. Hunting may raise morale and nutrition, but large herds can also block routes, startle draft animals, or damage camps if movement becomes chaotic. Big animals, big consequences. Historians still debate how significantly buffalo availability improved emigrant diets overall. Some wagon parties hunted successfully. Others lacked time, skill, ammunition, or opportunity. Accounts differ widely. Not every herd becomes dinner. Far from it. The practical burden of heat extends beyond thirst. Food storage becomes harder. Salted meat spoils faster when mishandled. Butter turns soft. Flour attracts insects if containers are compromised. Even simple cooking becomes unpleasant when standing over fire in oppressive heat. Yet dinner still must happen. Always. Dinner does not care about comfort. Your ears catch the dull metal scrape of a cooking pot as evening meal begins after a brutal day. Sweat has dried into salt on skin. Shirts smell of dust and body heat. Wet leather from river days has given way to sun-baked stiffness. The environment is changing everyone. Slowly, physically, emotionally too. Summer hardship introduces a new emotional transition. Early trail optimism begins cracking under accumulated strain. Excitement fades. The journey becomes labour. Endless labour. Every sunrise means more walking. More heat. More dust. More uncertainty. This is where morale becomes fragile. Small frustrations grow sharp. A lost spoon can trigger disproportionate irritation. A stubborn ox can provoke near philosophical despair. A broken strap feels like personal betrayal. Fatigue magnifies everything. Research from Princeton University suggests prolonged environmental stress often intensified interpersonal tension within wagon groups, especially when sleep, nutrition, and hydration deteriorated. That feels universal. Tired humans are not at their best. Children feel it too. They cry more easily. They complain more openly. They ask questions adults no longer enjoy answering. How much farther? When do we stop? Why is it so hot? Fair questions. No satisfying answers. Still moments of grace survive. Near evening, when heat finally loosens its grip, the prairie transforms. Light softens into gold. Long shadows stretch beside wagons. Wind cools. Birds reappear. The harshness of noon feels almost impossible. Almost. Pause here. This rhythm of suffering and relief becomes one of the trail's deepest teachers. Hardship rarely remains constant. It rises, falls, returns. Relief becomes meaningful precisely because discomfort came first. Cold water tastes extraordinary after heat. Shade feels sacred. Even a breeze feels generous. For a moment it feels as though twilight settles over camp. Buffalo bones lie scattered near worn wagon ruts. Smoke rises from cook fires into purple sky. Oxen graze slowly, exhausted but steady. Everyone moves more quietly tonight. Energy is low, very low. Yet the wagons still roll west. That matters, because despite heat, dust and fatigue, progress continues, and soon the land itself will begin changing once more. The plains will rise. The air will cool. Far ahead, blue shapes grow larger against the horizon. The mountains are coming. For days, perhaps weeks, the mountains have hovered at the edge of vision like a rumour made visible. At first they appear as faint blue shadows against the western sky. Easy to mistake for clouds, easy to ignore. But each day they grow. Larger. Darker. More real. Now no one can ignore them. The Rockies have arrived. Your mind drifts across the high plains in late afternoon. The land no longer feels endlessly flat. Subtle rises and long slopes begin replacing open prairie. Grass thins in places. Sagebrush appears more often. The wind feels cooler after sunset, yet sharper, drier and less forgiving. The air itself begins to change. You notice it while breathing. Just slightly. Then more. Altitude speaks quietly at first. According to research from Stanford University, emigrants approaching the Rocky Mountain corridor encountered gradual environmental shifts that affected animals breathing comfort, water availability, and travel speed well before the actual pass crossings. That gradual shift matters, because danger does not always announce itself dramatically. Sometimes it accumulates. Mile by mile, the emotional mood of the wagon train changes too. The endless prairie, once exhausting in its sameness, has at least become familiar. The mountains are different. They bring beauty, yes, but also uncertainty. Families know this next phase carries consequences. Wheels will strain harder. Animals will tire faster. Weather may turn suddenly. Mistakes become costly. Your ears catch the sound of iron rims striking rock more frequently now. The ground has changed under the wheels. Dirt roads become rougher. Stones jar axles, wagons bounce harder. Every rut feels sharper. Bodies feel it. Badly. An intimate detail from trail diaries appears often in mountain approaches. People complained of deep muscular soreness in places they had stopped noticing on the plains. Hips, knees, lower backs, shoulders. The trail finds every weakness. Eventually, children who once ran freely now tire more easily on climbs. Older travellers slow visibly. Even strong adults feel the accumulating cost of months on the trail. Fatigue becomes layered. Not daily fatigue. Seasonal fatigue. A deeper exhaustion. Historians from University of Chicago note that by the time emigrants reached the Rockies, most wagon parties had already experienced significant physical wear, reduced supplies and growing equipment stress. That last part matters greatly. The wagons themselves are aging. Wood dries, bolts loosen, axles grind. Canvas frays, everything has been working for months. Nothing stays fresh. Your mind drifts beside a wagon halted for repairs. The father kneels near a wheel hub coated in grease and dust. His hands are black with axle grease. The smell is thick and oily in cool air. Nearby children wait in frustrated silence because every stop delays progress. And timing matters now. More than ever. The mountains introduce a new kind of anxiety. Winter. Not immediate winter. Future winter. Even during warm months, settlers understand a terrifying truth. Delays can become fatal later. Reach the mountain corridors too late in the season and snow may trap entire wagon trains. That possibility hangs over every decision. Move carefully, but not too slowly. Push harder, but not too hard. A cruel balance. Research from Harvard University emphasizes that seasonal timing became one of the most critical strategic concerns for overland emigrants, especially as they approached higher elevation routes. Timing shapes survival, perhaps more than strength. Your ears pick up another new sound. Water rushing over stone. Mountain streams appear more often now. They offer welcome relief from dusty plains, but introduce fresh complications. Clear water is easier to find, yet crossings become more frequent. Terrain funnels movement into narrower corridors. The land dictates terms. Increasingly, animals feel it too. Oxen breathe harder on inclines. Their pace slows. Muscles tremble after steep grades. Drivers become more attentive to strain. Overloaded wagons that survive the plains begin revealing hidden problems in rising terrain. Weight becomes enemy. Again, some families face painful decisions. Items once considered essential may now be discarded to lighten loads. Spare furniture, heavy trunks, extra tools, even treasured possessions may be abandoned beside the trail. That hurts, more than expected. Pause here. There is something emotionally devastating about abandoning objects you carried hundreds of miles. Every discarded item represents labour planning and hope. A chest once defended in arguments, now left in dust. A chair, a stove piece, a trunk, gone. Historians still debate how much trail litter accumulated during peak migration years, but surviving accounts consistently describe discarded possessions scattered along heavily travelled routes. The trail becomes an archive of surrender. What people leave behind tells stories. Children struggle with these losses in especially direct ways. A girl may lose a cherished toy because weight matters. A boy may be forced to abandon a collection of stones or bones gathered across the plains. To adults, these are small sacrifices. To children, not always. Loss scales differently. Your mind drifts upward as evening cold returns with surprising force. This shocks many emigrants. After weeks of punishing summer heat, nights near higher elevation can become sharply cold. Cold returns. Not winter cold, but enough. Blankets feel important again. Breath becomes faintly visible before sunrise. Wet socks dry slower. Morning fingers stiffen while tying straps and harness knots. The body must adapt once more. Heat to chill, dust to rock, open prairie to rising land. This constant adaptation wears on morale, yet something else grows alongside fatigue. Anticipation. The mountains are intimidating, but they also signal progress. Families know that somewhere ahead lies the great gateway everyone talked about back east, South Pass, the famous passage, the route that made wagons possible. Historians from Princeton University suggest that many emigrants viewed reaching the Rocky Mountain corridor as a psychological milestone, equal in significance to any geographic marker. That feels right. Because for months the mountains were abstract. Now they are immediate, massive, unavoidable. For a moment it feels as though dusk settles across the wagon train. The mountains glow blue-grey beneath fading sunlight. Campfires flicker against growing cold. Wood smoke rises into thin evening air. Somewhere nearby a child asks quietly if Oregon is close now. An exhausted parent smiles. Closer, not close. That distinction matters. The hardest psychological trick of the Oregon Trail may be this. Major milestones feel like endings when they are often only transitions. The plains are behind, but the journey is far from over. Ahead lies the Great Crossing, the gateway through the Rockies, the place where thousands will feel hope rise. South Pass awaits. The mountains no longer sit at the horizon like distant shapes painted against the sky. They surround you now, their presence fills the world. Stone ridges rise in layered folds. Wind moves differently here, colder and more focused, slipping through valleys with sharp intention. The air feels thinner each morning. Every breath reminds you, you are climbing. And at last the great name that has followed the wagon train for months comes into reach, South Pass. For countless emigrants, these two words carried enormous emotional weight long before arrival. Back in Missouri, guidebooks spoke of it with near mythical importance. Traders mentioned it. Trappers praised it. Wagon captains planned entire seasons around reaching it. Now it is real. Almost surprisingly ordinary. That is perhaps the first great shock. South Pass is not a dramatic cliff edge or towering canyon. There is no heroic stone gate announcing entry into the Rockies. No single breathtaking summit where trumpets should logically play. Instead, South Pass in Wyoming is broad open and gradual. It rises gently across a wide saddle between mountain systems. That quiet geography is precisely what makes it revolutionary. Because wagons can cross, slowly, but reliably. According to research from Stanford University, South Pass became the decisive overland corridor because its wide, relatively gentle grade allowed heavy wagons and livestock to move through the Rockies without extreme climbing. That simple fact changes history entirely. Your mind drifts beside the wagon train during the ascent. The climb is not sudden. It builds over days. Grass gives way to more sage and rocky soil. Mountain streams cut through low valleys. The wheels crunch over gravel and stone. The familiar creak of wood now mixes with sharper sounds. Rock on iron, stone under hoof, cold wind through canvas. The physical effort becomes obvious. Oxen lean hard into harnesses, muscles flexing under thick hides. Their breath comes heavier now. Steam rises from nostrils during cool mornings. Drivers speak more gently to conserve energy and maintain steady movement. No rushing here. None. Speed becomes irrelevant. Consistency matters. An intimate detail from emigrant diaries appears repeatedly during mountain travel. People became strangely protective of their oxen, sometimes speaking of them almost like family members after months together. That makes sense. Shared suffering creates bonds. A stubborn ox that once inspired frustration may now inspire gratitude. That animal has hauled your life across a continent. Respect grows, even affection. Historians from Harvard University note that emigrant writings frequently reveal emotional attachment to draft animals, especially after repeated hardships where animal endurance directly ensured survival. Animals become companions, not just labour. That emotional shift matters, because loss hits harder now. And losses continue. Not every wagon reaches South Pass intact. Axles fail, wheels crack, animals collapse, supplies diminish, bodies weaken. Even success carries scars. By this stage, every family has been changed by the trail. No exceptions. Some changes are visible. Weight loss, sun-darkened skin, worn clothing, roughened hands. Some changes live inside. Quiet grief, new patience, harder realism. Your ears catch a strange sound in camp. Less chatter than before. Not silence exactly, but a quieter form of community. The early months of the trail included constant speculation, optimism, and conversation about what might happen. That has changed. People speak more concretely now. About tomorrow. About repairs. About weather. Hope remains. But it has matured. Research from Princeton University suggests prolonged hardship often transformed emigrant psychology from idealistic anticipation into disciplined endurance. That feels accurate. Dreams survive, but they become heavier, more grounded. Your mind drifts toward the crest of South Pass itself. If you expect theatrical grandeur, the pass almost confuses you. The land simply rises levels and then subtly shifts. No dramatic summit declares victory, and yet something profound happens. Without fully realizing it, you cross a continental divide. Water flowing east and water flowing west separate here. One side eventually feeds the Atlantic drainage systems, the other moves toward the Pacific. A quiet threshold. Huge meaning. Pause here. That subtlety feels almost poetic. One of the greatest crossings in American migration history does not announce itself loudly. It happens in open wind under wide sky. History often whispers, not always shouts. Children do not fully grasp the significance, they notice practical things instead. Is it colder? Why is the wind stronger? When do we go downhill? Reasonable questions. Adults feel more. They know what this means. They crossed the Rockies. They actually did it. That realization lands in waves. Relief, pride, disbelief, exhaustion. Sometimes tears. Yes, tears. Even among hardened adults. Because milestones release stored tension. Months of fear concentrated around this mountain barrier now begin dissolving. The impossible became possible. That matters deeply. Your ears catch laughter near one wagon. Real laughter, unforced. Someone jokes that if Missouri neighbors could see them now, they would finally stop saying the plan was foolish. Perhaps, though some neighbors were probably correct about the risks. Fair is fair. Historians still debate how many emigrants truly understood South Pass geographically while crossing it. Some journals show detailed awareness of the continental divide. Others barely mention it. Accounts differ perhaps because exhaustion often overshadowed abstract geography. That sounds believable. After months of hardship, symbolic meaning competes with sore feet. And sore feet are persuasive, very persuasive. Yet crossing South Pass does not mean danger ends. Far from it. This is one of the cruel psychological traps of the Oregon Trail. Reaching a famous milestone feels like nearing completion. In truth, immense hardship remains ahead. Snake River country, desert stretches, steep descents, blue mountains, more loss, more exhaustion. The west beyond South Pass is not gentle, not even slightly. According to historians from University of Chicago, many emigrants later reported surprise at how difficult the route remained after South Pass. Despite assuming the worst hardships were behind them, expectation shapes suffering. False relief can be dangerous. Still tonight, the wagon train allows itself pride. Camp settles under cold, clear skies. The stars appear brilliant in thin mountain air. Fires crackle brighter against darkness. Wood smoke carries sharp resin from higher country timber. Soup tastes good, better than usual. Relief improves appetite. One physically grounded truth becomes impossible to ignore. The land behind is no longer the same land ahead, the plains are gone, the eastern half of the journey is over. The western half begins. For a moment it feels as though the wind itself changes direction around camp. Somewhere in the darkness a child sleeps with boots still half on. A mother quietly repairs torn clothing by firelight. A father studies the wagon wheel one last time before resting. Everyone feels it. They crossed the gateway. They made it through the Rockies. But the trail is not finished. Tomorrow they move deeper into the American West, where forts, commerce, and hard choices wait along the road ahead. South Pass lies behind the wagon train now, but the sense of accomplishment lingers like warmth from a fading fire. The great gateway through the Rockies has been crossed. For one evening, perhaps one precious evening, families allow themselves a dangerous thought. Maybe the hardest part is over. It is an understandable thought. It is also wrong. Very wrong. The trail west of South Pass offers a different kind of hardship. Not always dramatic, often exhausting in quieter ways. Distance still stretches ahead. Supplies run lower, wagons age further, animals weaken. And now one type of place becomes especially important: frontier forts. These forts are more than military outposts. They function as lifelines. Rumour exchanges, supply depots, repair zones, and emotional checkpoints. For emigrants who have spent months surrounded by grass rock and uncertainty, the sight of a fort can feel almost unreal. Civilization. Sort of. Your mind drifts toward Fort Laramie, one of the most famous landmarks on the Oregon Trail. Long before reaching it, travellers notice signs of concentrated activity. More hoofprints, more traffic, more discarded debris. Then structures appear. Wooden buildings, fences, smoke, people. Lots of people. The psychological effect is immediate. After weeks of open country-built structures feel strangely comforting. Even rough wooden walls suggest order, stability, predictability. Not luxury, just structure. According to research from University of California, forts such as Fort Laramie became crucial logistical hubs for emigrants, offering access to supplies, blacksmith services, livestock exchange mail, and valuable trail information. Information may matter most, because information reduces uncertainty, or increases it. Sometimes both. Your ears catch the sharp ring of a hammer against iron. Blacksmith shops draw immediate crowds. Wagon repairs cannot wait. Bent rims, worn axles, broken chains, cracked, fittings, loose bolts. Months of trail abuse leave mechanical scars. Every wagon tells a story, usually a noisy one. Forts also create a sudden sensory overload. After the repetitive quiet of trail life concentrated, human activity feels intense. Voices overlap. Animals crowd enclosures. Traders shout prices. Smoke from multiple fires mixes with leather manure iron and cooking meat. The smell is unforgettable. Not pleasant, but vivid. Children often react first with excitement. They stare at goods stacked in trading posts: sugar, coffee, fabric, candles, ammunition, tools, maybe even sweets if fortune smiles. Children always notice sugar. Across centuries, some parents hesitate to spend. Supplies cost more here, much more. Distance inflates prices dramatically. Traders understand leverage very well. Convenience is expensive. Need is profitable. Historians from Harvard University note that prices at trail forts often reflected scarcity transport costs and opportunistic commerce, leading many emigrants to complain about severe markups. Complaints change little. Need still wins. Imagine a father standing inside a trading post. His clothes are dusty, sun-faded, and worn at the seams. He studies the price of flour and feels his stomach tighten. Too expensive, but perhaps necessary. That tension defines fort commerce. Buy now and lose money. Refuse and risk future shortages. Every purchase becomes strategic. Not comfortable, strategic. An intimate detail from emigrant journals appears often around forts. Many travellers eagerly waited for mail or news from the east. Even weeks-old information carried enormous emotional value. A letter mattered. A newspaper mattered. News felt precious. Pause there. Modern life normalizes instant communication. Trail emigrants lived inside informational silence. Weeks or months might pass without news from home. A single letter could collapse that silence instantly. Joy, grief, relief, homesickness, all in paper form. Your mind drifts toward groups gathered outside fort walls exchanging rumors. Rumor becomes its own currency on the Oregon Trail. How is the Snake River route? Are grass conditions worsening? Any disease ahead? How early will snow come? Questions flow endlessly. Answers vary. Wildly, one traveller insists the route ahead is manageable. Another warns of severe water shortages. A third describes impassable sections with alarming confidence. Truth becomes difficult to isolate. Historians still debate how reliable fort-based trail intelligence truly was. Some reports were highly useful. Others reflected rumour-outdated observations or personal exaggeration. Accounts differ considerably. That sounds familiar. Human information systems remain imperfect. Always have. Forts also reveal the growing scale of migration. Emigrants see evidence they are part of something much larger. More wagons arrive, more families pass through. More animals crowd nearby grazing grounds. The trail is swelling, year by year. This creates mixed emotions. Shared experience offers comfort. Larger numbers mean mutual assistance and social energy. But larger migration also means more competition for grazing water and supplies. Crowding creates pressure, quietly. Research from Yale University suggests that rising emigrant volume during peak years intensified resource strain near major forts and crossings. Even temporary civilization strains under demand. Animals benefit from fort stops too. Oxen may receive better grazing or brief rest. Some emigrants replace weakened livestock if resources allow. This can save a journey, or bankrupt a family. Sometimes both feel possible. Your ears catch a softer sound now, laughter around evening fires near the fort. After months of isolation, social life briefly returns in fuller form. Families share stories. Children play with unfamiliar companions. Musicians sometimes appear. Songs drift into cool night air. These moments matter deeply. Community restores morale. Exhaustion softens. For a few hours, people remember what ordinary social life felt like. Then reality returns. The road still calls. Not everyone leaves the fort with relief. Some depart heavier in spirit. Supplies remain low, costs depleted savings. Bad news arrived by letter. A wagon repair revealed worsening structural damage. The fort can comfort. It can also confirm vulnerability. That emotional duality feels central to trail life. Every checkpoint offers hope and fresh anxiety at once. Progress and warning, relief and pressure. Your mind drifts toward departure morning. Wagons are loaded again, purchases secured, repairs completed or completed enough. Children complain about leaving, adults feel less sentimental. They understand, rest stops end. Distance remains. According to historians from Princeton University, emigrants often described leaving major forts with renewed morale but heightened awareness of the harsher terrain ahead. Renewed, but sobered. That feels right. For a moment it feels as though the fort recedes behind the wagons. Wooden walls shrink into distance. Hammer sounds fade. Open land returns. Ahead lies country that grows harsher and drier. The route bends toward the Snake River corridor. Toward volcanic earth, toward thirst, toward another severe test. The comforts of the fort vanish quickly. The trail never lets comfort linger long. The fort disappears behind you faster than comfort ever seems to last. For a brief moment, wooden walls, hammer strikes, and human bustle offered relief from the vast loneliness of the trail. Now the wagons move once more into open country and the land ahead feels different. Harder, harsher. Less forgiving. You're entering the Snake River corridor, one of the most dreaded stretches of the Oregon Trail. Families who once feared rivers and mountains now confront a quieter enemy. Not dramatic cliffs. Not giant storms. Exhaustion through scarcity. Water exists here, yes, but access becomes complicated. The landscape itself feels raw-shaped by volcanic violence and deep geological time. Dust gives way in places to black basalt-fractured rock sagebrush and barren stretches where the earth seems stripped to essentials. It feels ancient and indifferent. Your mind drifts across what is now Idaho. The sky remains vast, but the land below has changed dramatically. Dry winds sweep across broken terrain. Sparse vegetation offers little comfort. Sharp stones punish wagon wheels and hooves. The Snake River cuts through much of this country, yet cruelly the water is not always easy to reach. It can be visible, and unreachable. That feels almost insulting. According to research from University of Chicago, emigrants along the Snake River route often faced severe challenges from difficult terrain, limited grazing, hazardous descents, and constrained water access despite travelling near a major river system. That contradiction frustrates everyone. Water nearby, still thirsty. The river often runs below steep banks or through canyons that make direct access difficult. Even when water can be reached, getting wagons and livestock safely down and back up may be exhausting or impossible at certain points. The land makes decisions, not people. Your ears catch a familiar sound now made worse by the terrain. Wagon wheels striking rock, hard, repeatedly. The impact travels through wood and iron into every bolt and axle. Wagons already weakened by months of travel begin failing more often. Cracks appear, pins loosen, rims warp. Every strange sound matters. Very much. An intimate detail from emigrant diaries appears often in this region. People became obsessed with mechanical noises. A new creak, a sharper groan, a wheel sounding slightly wrong. You listen differently now, because sound predicts trouble. A quiet wagon is a blessing. A new noise is dread. Animals suffer deeply here. Grazing quality declines. Grass becomes patchy and dry. Oxen that carried families across the plains now show unmistakable fatigue. Ribs become more visible. Movement slows, heads hang lower during rest. Even the strongest teams weaken. Research from Harvard University emphasizes that declining forage in western trail segments contributed significantly to livestock collapse, often more than dramatic accidents. That surprises some people, but starvation is rarely cinematic. It is gradual, relentless, cruel. Your mind settles beside one wagon where a father studies his oxen in silence. He says little. He does not need to. Everyone sees the problem. One animal favours a leg, another eats less. Both pull slower. The family feels trapped between terrible options. Rest longer and lose precious time. Push harder and risk collapse. Neither feels safe. This is one of the harshest emotional realities of the trail. Survival decisions often involve choosing between bad and worse. Not good and bad, just degrees of risk. Historians from Yale University note that emigrant writings increasingly reflected decision fatigue in later trail stages, when prolonged hardship eroded mental resilience and made every choice feel heavier. Decision fatigue, a modern phrase, an old suffering. After months of constant vigilance, even small choices become exhausting. Should we stop here? Cross now. Save flour. Push farther. The mind grows tired. Very tired. Heat remains a problem, though the harshness here feels different from the open plains. Dry air pulls moisture from skin quickly, lips split, hands crack. Dust mixes with sweat into a fine gritty paste that settles into every fold of clothing. Even food tastes dusty. Even sleep feels dusty. Dust becomes part of you. Children struggle visibly now. Their earlier energy fades. Complaints become quieter, which somehow feels worse than loud complaints. Quiet fatigue unsettles parents more. Much more. A child who stops asking questions worries everyone. Pause here. Silence from children often signals real exhaustion. That truth appears repeatedly in trail journals. One intimate moment survives in several accounts. Mothers sometimes soaked cloth in precious water to cool overheated children during the hottest parts of the day. Tiny acts of care, huge meaning. Care persists even under scarcity. That matters. Still, beauty has not vanished entirely. The western landscape offers stark grandeur. Volcanic cliffs glow red in evening light. The river reflects gold at sunset. Hawks circle above broken ridges. The scale remains astonishing. Harsh beauty, beautiful harshness. Both are true. Historians still debate which segments emigrants feared most psychologically after South Pass. Some accounts emphasize river crossings. Others emphasize desert stretches like the Snake Corridor because cumulative fatigue amplified every hardship. No single consensus survives. That makes sense. Fear changes with experience. Early travellers fear the unknown. Later travellers fear endurance. That distinction matters. Your ears catch another sound now, less common, more dreaded. A wheel crack. Sharp. Sudden. Everyone freezes. The wagon lurches. Movement stops. Dust settles around still wheels. For a few seconds no one speaks. Then action erupts. Tools, rope, inspection, assessment. How bad? Can it be repaired? Do we have spare parts? Mechanical failure here feels especially dangerous because margins are thinner. Supplies are lower. Animals are weaker. Energy reserves are depleted. Everything costs more now. Even repairs. Research from Stanford University indicates that late-stage wagon failures increasingly force difficult abandonment decisions, especially when replacement materials were unavailable. Abandonment. There is that word again. The trail keeps demanding surrender. Possessions, comfort, strength, illusions. For a moment it feels as though evening settles beside the Snake River. The river glimmers below steep banks. Campfires burn in scattered wind-sheltered spaces. Smoke rises thin and sharp in dry air. Dinner is quiet tonight. Too quiet. People chew slowly. Muscles ache deeply. Even conversation feels like effort. And yet, the wagons remain. The families remain. They are still moving west. That stubborn persistence may be the most remarkable part of the Oregon Trail. Not dramatic heroics, not legendary moments. Continuation. Moving despite fatigue. Moving despite fear. Moving despite loss. Ahead lie the Blue Mountains, the final Great Barrier before Oregon. One more climb, one more test. Then the valley. Then arrival. Almost. The Snake River country slowly recedes behind the wagon train, though its exhaustion remains lodged deep in muscle and bone. Bodies ache in familiar places now. Feet burn inside worn boots. Hands feel permanently rough from rope leather and wood. Even sleep no longer fully restores strength. Fatigue has layers, deep layers, and still the trail rises again. Ahead stand the Blue Mountains, the last great mountain barrier before Oregon's fertile valleys. Their name sounds gentle, almost comforting. Blue Mountains, soft words, calm words. Do not be fooled. The beauty is real. So is the hardship. Your mind drifts westward into what is now Oregon. The land begins changing once more. Dry open country gradually gives way to rising forested slopes. Pine and fir appear in greater numbers. The air smells different here. Resin, needles, cool earth. After months of sage dust and dry grass, the scent alone feels almost shocking. Alive, fresh. Yet the terrain quickly reminds everyone that beauty and difficulty often travel together. The roads through the Blue Mountains are steep, narrow, uneven, and often deeply rutted from earlier wagon traffic. Tree roots twist beneath loose soil. Rocks hide beneath mud after rain. Descents can be as dangerous as climbs. Gravity helps, then punishes. According to research from the University of California, the Blue Mountains represented one of the most physically demanding late-stage sections of the Oregon Trail. Due to steep grades, timbered terrain, and wagon braking challenges, that last detail matters. Braking? Going downhill sounds easier. It is not. Not with loaded wagons. Your ears catch the grinding sound of wheels dragged against controlled braking systems. Many emigrants chain wheels or use drag shoes, primitive braking methods that slow descent by increasing friction. The sound is harsh. Wood scraping. Iron grinding. Everything straining. An intimate detail from trail journals appears often in mountain descents. The smell of overheated wood and friction became unforgettable to many emigrants. Burnt wood. Hot metal. Pine air. An odd mixture, but unforgettable. Animals struggle differently here. Climbing taxes strength, descending taxes balance. Oxen lean backward against harnesses while controlling wagon weight. Their muscles shake under prolonged strain. Drivers watch constantly for slips. One stumble matters. A single fall can pull a wagon sideways, overturn cargo, or injure animals. Everything feels less stable. Research from Harvard University notes that late trail mountain segments created disproportionately high wagon damage because accumulated wear combined with steep terrain increased failure risk. Accumulated wear, that phrase captures everything. The Blue Mountains are not merely difficult on their own, they are difficult after everything else. After rivers, after disease, after heat, after months of exhaustion. That changes the experience. Your mind settles beside one family climbing a narrow grade. No one talks much now, breathing is heavier, even children conserve energy. A mother keeps one hand on the wagon canvas while walking. Her movements are slower than weeks ago. She notices it. Everyone notices their own limits now. Fatigue strips away illusion. Historians from Princeton University suggest that by the final mountain stages, emigrants increasingly describe themselves not as adventurers, but simply as tired people trying to finish. That feels honest. Romance fades, persistence remains, and yet moments of wonder still appear. Dense forest creates sensory experiences absent on the plains. Sunlight filters through pine branches in long golden shafts. Birds call from unseen branches. Cool shade relieves sun-beaten skin. Silence changes too. The plains had open silence. This is enclosed silence, forest silence. Different, closer, more intimate. Children sometimes respond with renewed curiosity. After endless open country trees feel magical again. They gather pine cones, touch bark, listen for birds. Small discoveries briefly awaken forgotten energy. Children still find wonder. Even here, pause for a moment. That resilience matters. Adults often measure progress in miles and supplies. Children sometimes measure it in discoveries. A strange feather, a squirrel, a cool stream, a pine cone. Wonder survives through small things. One intimate detail from surviving letters appears repeatedly. Many emigrants described hearing rain on forest canopy as strangely comforting after months of open sky exposure. That makes sense. Rain sounds softer through trees, less hostile, more sheltered. Still, weather adds danger. Rain transforms steep roads into mud traps. Wheels sink. Slopes become slippery. Animals lose traction. Progress slows dramatically. Even a modest storm can cause major delay. And delays are dangerous. Always. Winter remains a shadow in every calculation. Though Oregon may now feel close is not the same as safe. Early snow in mountain country remains a terrifying possibility. That fear sharpens discipline. No wasted time. No careless stops. Historians still debate how much emigrant morale improved upon entering Oregon territory. Some diaries show renewed optimism. Others reveal emotional numbness caused by prolonged hardship. Accounts differ significantly. That seems deeply human. Exhaustion affects celebration. Sometimes reaching near success feels strangely muted. The body can only feel so much. Your ears catch another familiar sound. Axle inspection, rope tightening, repair work by fading light. Even now, maintenance never ends. Wagons that survived every previous hardship still demand attention. Nothing coasts. Not here. Not yet. Your mind drifts toward a ridge opening between trees. The forest thins just enough to reveal distant land beyond the mountains. Valleys stretch westward under soft light. Not fully visible. Just enough. A glimpse. Only a glimpse. But enough to stir something powerful. Hope returns. Not the naive hope of Missouri. A different hope. Harder. Earned. This emotional transition feels profound. Early hope was dream-based, imagined, romantic. This new hope comes through suffering. It has weight. It has scars. It feels real. Research from Yale University emphasizes that late-stage emigrant accounts often show a shift from idealized aspiration toward grounded gratitude. Gratitude. That word fits. Not excitement alone. Gratitude for functioning wheels, for surviving children, for animals still standing, for another morning, for another mile. For a moment it feels as though evening settles in the Blue Mountains. Pine smoke rises from campfires. Cool air moves through branches, boots dry near flames. Soup simmers with quiet steam. Tonight feels different. The end is near. Not immediate, but near. The final descent toward Oregon valleys awaits. Soon the mountains will fall behind. Soon fertile land will open ahead. Soon the long journey west will become arrival. And with arrival comes a strange truth. Reaching Oregon will not end hardship. It will simply begin a new life. The Blue Mountains finally begin to loosen their grip. The steep grades soften, the dense timber thins, the long exhausting climb gives way to descent, and with that descent comes a strange emotional shift that is difficult to describe unless you have lived through months of relentless movement. You're almost there! Almost. That word becomes dangerous on the Oregon Trail because almost can still mean days, sometimes weeks of hard travel. Yet something undeniable has changed. The air feels wetter. Streams run more frequently. Vegetation grows thicker. The landscape begins whispering promises the emigrants have been chasing since Missouri. Oregon, real Oregon, not rumor, not maps, not guidebook fantasy. Your mind drifts downward through the final mountain corridors toward the great valleys of the Pacific Northwest. The earth softens under wagon wheels. Trees stand taller and denser. Moss appears on shaded stone. The smell of pine slowly mixes with damp soil and living water. After months of dust and dry wind, the scent feels almost unreal. Alive, rich, heavy with moisture. According to research from University of California, the ecological transition into Western Oregon often shocked emigrants because of the dramatic contrast with the dry interior trail regions they had just crossed. Shock is the right word, because the change feels sudden. After so much brown and grey-green feels overwhelming. Grass grows thick, ferns spread beneath trees, streams run cold and clear, rain clouds gather with quiet confidence as if this land has no interest in drought anxiety. Water is everywhere now. That alone feels miraculous. Your ears catch a new sound. Not windsweeping endless prairie, but water moving through branches and ravines. Birds sound different too. Forest calls replace plains' silence. The whole soundscape has changed, and so have the people. By now every emigrant carries visible evidence of the trail. Clothing hangs looser on thinner bodies. Faces are darker from sun and wind. Boots are worn patched, sometimes barely intact. Hands have thickened with labour. Children look older. They are older, not in years, in experience. Historians from Harvard University note that many emigrant accounts described arrival in Oregon not as triumphant celebration, but as emotionally complex exhaustion mixed with disbelief. That feels true, because joy and grief now travel together. One intimate detail from trail letters appears often near arrival. Families began counting losses with painful clarity. Supplies could be replaced. Broken wagons could be rebuilt. But absences became impossible to ignore. Someone missing at supper. Someone missing by the fire. An empty place beside the wagon. Pause there. Arrival sharpens grief. During motion, survival dominates attention. Once the pace slows, memory catches up. People finally feel what constant movement postponed. The father who died near the Platte. The child buried by the trail. The grandmother who never reached the mountains. They arrive too, in memory. Always. Your mind settles beside one wagon descending into lower country. A mother watches her children walking ahead. She should feel only relief. Instead, tears come without warning. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears. Exhaustion sometimes opens emotional doors all at once. She made it, and she paid for it. Research from Princeton University suggests major survival milestones often trigger delayed emotional processing, especially after prolonged physical stress. Modern language calls it decompression. 19th century settlers simply called it feeling overwhelmed. That works too. The final push toward the Willamette Valley becomes filled with contradictory emotions. Some settlers feel renewed energy. They walk faster, talk more, make plans again. Where will we settle? How much land can we claim? Can we build before winter? Dreams return. But different dreams now. Less romantic. More practical. No one talks much about adventure anymore. They talk about roofs, fences, seed, lumber, food storage. The trail has cured many illusions. Historians still debate whether emigrants generally arrived with realistic expectations about Oregon farming conditions. Some had excellent information from earlier settlers. Others still carried exaggerated expectations shaped by promotional literature. That difference matters, because Oregon is fertile, but not effortless. No land is. Your ears catch laughter from children splashing in a creek during a brief stop. That laughter sounds different now, lighter, less strained. Even children sense the journey is changing. One boy kneels and drinks cold water directly from his hands. No rationing, no desperate counting of barrels, just water. Simple, abundant, sacred. That moment says more than speeches could. Abundance changes posture. People stand differently when scarcity loosens its grip. Still, final travel remains physically demanding. Mud appears more often. Rain complicates roads. Wagons sink into soft ground. Axles strain in fresh ways. The land offers fertility but not easy movement. Even now comfort waits. Not yet. An intimate detail from surviving diaries appears repeatedly. Many emigrants noticed how strange it felt to sleep without constant fear of immediate trail departure. That is profound. For months every morning demanded motion. Now stopping becomes possible. The body does not immediately trust that. Even in safer ground, people wake before dawn expecting commands, harness noise and wheel movement. Routine lingers. Long after necessity fades, your mind drifts toward a final ridge. Below broad valley land opens under cloudy sky. Fields, river bends, open meadow, timber stands, smoke from distant cabins. Human settlement. Permanent settlement. Oregon. At last. For a moment nobody speaks. The silence is not empty, it is full. Full of fatigue, disbelief, gratitude, sorrow, and something almost spiritual. They did it. They crossed a continent. Not soldiers. Not explorers. Families. Ordinary families. That may be the most astonishing truth of all. According to historians from Yale University, the success of ordinary household migration along the Oregon Trail fundamentally reshaped American settlement patterns and national identity. And here at the edge of arrival, that transformation becomes personal, not national. Personal. One family, one wagon, one exhausted set of survivors looking down at a future they once only imagined. The trail behind them is carved into memory now. Rivers, dust, graves, heat, hunger, mountains, endless walking, endless repair. And yet they kept moving. For a moment it feels as though twilight settles over the valley. Rain hangs in distant clouds. Wood smoke rises from scattered cabins. Cool air touches tired skin. Tomorrow they enter the valley. Tomorrow wheels stop. Tomorrow arrival becomes real. And then comes the next challenge. Building a life from almost nothing. The wagons finally roll into the valleys of Oregon, and for the first time in months the movement feels different. The wheels still turn, the oxen still pull, boots still sink into earth. Yet the meaning of each mile has changed completely. These are no longer miles of pursuit. They are miles of arrival. That distinction settles into the body slowly. After months of measuring life in distance, rivers, repairs, and survival, many emigrants feel strangely disoriented. The goal that carried them west now lies directly before them. The question is no longer how to reach Oregon. The question becomes far more difficult. How do you live here? Your mind drifts into the fertile lands of the Willamette Valley. Rain nourishes broad grasslands and dense timber. Rivers wind through rich soil. Oaks and firs mark the landscape. Mist lingers in morning air. Compared with the dry plains and harsh interior, this region feels almost impossibly generous. Almost. Because abundance is not the same as ease. That truth arrives quickly. According to research from the University of California, the Willamette Valley offered exceptionally fertile agricultural land, which explains much of Oregon's appeal to settlers during the 1840s and 1850s. The soil is good. Very good. But good soil does not build shelter. It does not split timber. It doesn't plant seed. Human labor still decides survival. Your ears catch a new sound now. Axes, not repair hammers, not wagon chains, axes striking living trees. The sound of settlement begins with cutting wood. Sharp strikes, wood cracking, branches falling. The wagon has carried a family across a continent, but it cannot remain home forever. Shelter becomes the first great post-arrival priority. Winter still matters here, even in fertile Oregon. Rain, cold, and damp conditions demand real protection. A roof matters immediately. Walls matter. Dry storage matters. Your mind settles beside one family selecting land near a creek. The father studies tree lines and water access. The mother examines ground drainage with equal seriousness. Children wander nearby collecting strange leaves and sticks as if nothing important is happening. Children remain consistent. Adults become surveyors. Land selection is strategic. Too close to water invites flooding. Too far complicates daily life. Too dense with timber increases labor. Too open reduces wind protection. Every choice creates trade-offs. No perfect land exists. Only workable land. Historians from Harvard University note that early Oregon settlement demanded immediate environmental adaptation as emigrants had to learn local rainfall patterns, soil conditions, and seasonal rhythms. That adaptation can be humbling. Very humbling. A farmer from Missouri may understand farming deeply, yet Oregon asks different questions. Rainfall patterns differ. Crops behave differently. Timber density changes building methods. Familiar knowledge helps but does not fully transfer. Experience travels. Context changes. That is one of settlement's hardest lessons. An intimate detail from settler letters appears repeatedly. Many families slept in wagons or rough temporary shelters for weeks while building cabins. Arrival does not mean comfort. Not immediately. Sometimes not for months. Pause there. This matters because popular imagination often treats arrival as narrative resolution. Wagon reaches Oregon. Music swells. Hardship ends. History disagrees. Arrival ends one struggle. It begins another. The labor of building becomes relentless. Trees must be cut, stripped, shaped, lifted and fitted. Mud or clay may be used to seal gaps. Roofs require urgent completion. Rain does not politely wait for construction schedules. Nature rarely does. Your ears catch the dull thud of logs settling into place. Shoulders strain under timber weight. Hands blister again, this time from axes instead of wagon ropes. Bodies already worn by migration now begin construction labor. Exhaustion continues, just differently. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that post-migration labor demands cause significant physical strain, especially during first settlement seasons when shelter fencing and planting overlapped. Overlapping labor is brutal. Everything feels urgent. Food security becomes another major concern. Stored trail supplies are depleted. Hunting can supplement, but reliable long-term survival depends on planting and harvesting successfully. The calendar matters. Miss the planting window and consequences ripple forward. Settlers know this. That awareness creates pressure. Your mind drifts toward a mother unpacking the wagon for the final time. Objects removed now carry different emotional weight. The quilt used during mountain cold becomes bedding in a half-built cabin. Cooking pots move from trail survival to household routine. Ordinary life begins returning, slowly. Painfully slowly. One intimate emotional shift appears often in settlement diaries. Families began caring about beauty again. That sounds small. It is not. After survival mode, beauty returning signals psychological recovery. A curtain hung in a window, a flower planted near a doorway, a shelf arranged neatly. Tiny acts of domestic order. Civilization lives in small rituals, not only buildings. Historians still debate how quickly emigrants felt emotionally settled after arrival. Some adapted rapidly and embraced optimism. Others remained deeply homesick or psychologically unsettled for years. Accounts differ. That feels expected. Migration changes everyone differently. Your ears catch another new sound. Community. Neighbours helping neighbours raise walls, move timber-share tools, trade seed. Cooperation matters enormously. No family thrives alone for long. Frontier mythology celebrates rugged independence. Reality favours cooperation. Strongly. According to historians from Princeton University, mutual aid networks were central to successful frontier settlement, especially during early construction and harvest periods. That truth deserves emphasis. People survive together, even in frontier myths of self-reliance. For a moment it feels as though evening settles over a new homestead. Not a finished home. Just a rough shelter with partial walls and a roof good enough to resist rain. But it stands. Smoke rises from a new chimney. Children sleep under a roof their parents built. That matters. Deeply. The wagon sits nearby now, no longer centre of life. Mud-stained, weather-worn, quiet. Its work is mostly done. A strange sadness comes with that realization. This wooden structure carried everything through hardship. It was shelter, storage, transport and hope. Now it becomes background. History moves on. The settlers feel it too. They have arrived. But arrival has stripped away illusion. Oregon is not paradise. It is opportunity. Opportunity demands labour. And the years ahead will test these families in new ways as migration grows larger still. The trail is not ending. It is becoming an empire of movement. The wagon now rests beside cabins, fences, timber piles and muddy yards. Its wheels no longer turn each morning. The canvas no longer snaps awake at dawn. For many settlers, that silence feels almost unsettling at first. Too quiet. Almost suspiciously quiet. After months of living by motion, stillness can feel unnatural. Yet, while individual families begin planting roots in Oregon, something much larger is happening beyond their homesteads. The trail itself is changing, growing, accelerating. What began as the daring gamble of relatively small immigrant groups in the early 1840s soon becomes one of the great migration corridors in American history. The Oregon Trail is no longer an experiment. It is a system, a human river. Your mind drifts forward into the late 1840s and 1850s. News of successful settlement spreads eastward through letters, newspapers, land reports, and personal testimony. Stories once treated as uncertain now carry proof. People made it. Families settled. Crops grew. Cabins became towns. That evidence changes everything. According to research from Harvard University, immigrant traffic increased dramatically after the mid-1840s, with migration surging as reports of successful Western settlement became more widely trusted. Success attracts movement. Always. Then history accelerates even more. In 1848, gold is discovered in California. The California gold rush transforms Western migration on a massive scale. Though the Oregon Trail primarily served settlers heading to Oregon, large portions of the overland route now carry gold seekers, merchants, labourers, fortune hunters, and dreamers rushing west. Suddenly the trail becomes crowded. Very crowded. Your ears catch a different soundscape now. More wagons, more animals, more voices, larger camps, more trade, more competition. The once sparse trail becomes visibly worn into deeper ruts across the land. The earth records traffic, wheel by wheel, year by year. Historians from University of Chicago note that peak migration years dramatically increased environmental pressure on major trail corridors, especially grazing zones, water sources, and river crossings. That pressure compounds quickly. More people means more animals. More animals means less grass. Less grass means weaker livestock. The trail becomes harder in strange ways precisely because more people use it. This creates a powerful irony. Success breeds difficulty. Your mind drifts toward a heavily used crossing point. Where early emigrants once found modest camps, now hundreds of wagons may cluster. Dust thickens. Water becomes muddy faster. Waiting lines grow, tempers shorten. Crowds change behaviour, even on the frontier. One intimate detail from emigrant diaries appears repeatedly during peak traffic years. People complained constantly about delays caused by congestion. Not glamorous, but deeply human. A wagon jam in the wilderness is still a wagon jam. Frustration survives all centuries. Historians still debate the total number of emigrants who travel the Oregon Trail system, because records vary by year, route overlap, and destination. However, mainstream estimates place combined overland migrants in the hundreds of thousands by the 1860s. That scale matters enormously, because demographic movement becomes political power. In 1846, the Oregon Treaty formally establishes the border between the United States and United Kingdom at the 49th parallel, resolving long-standing territorial tensions over Oregon country. Settlers mattered in that process. Bodies on land matter politically. Governments count people. Migration shapes borders. Research from Princeton University emphasizes that overland migration helped solidify American territorial claims by transforming abstract claims into permanent settlement. That sounds administrative. Its consequences were enormous, because each new settlement intensified pressure on indigenous nations across the region. Land usage changed, hunting grounds narrowed, disease spread further, political control shifted rapidly. The trail's success carries a darker truth. Expansion for some meant dispossession for others. That remains central to understanding the Oregon Trail honestly. Your mind drifts toward native communities watching year after year as wagon numbers increase. What once appeared as intermittent movement becomes sustained transformation. Grass disappears under livestock pressure. Trade patterns shift. Settlement expands. The change is unmistakable and irreversible. Historians from Yale University note that the cumulative effects of overland migration profoundly disrupted indigenous economies' mobility and sovereignty across the American West. That disruption grows with every season. Meanwhile, the trail itself begins facing competition from technological change. Railroads. At first, this seems distant. Rail infrastructure remains limited in early decades. But the industrial future is approaching. Iron tracks promise something unimaginable to early wagon emigrants. Speed. Predictability. Reduce physical suffering. A shocking idea. Travel without months of walking. Imagine that. An intimate emotional transition begins during the 1850s and into the 1860s. The heroic identity of the pioneer remains culturally powerful, but practical incentives begin shifting. Why risk cholera, broken wagons, and starvation if new transportation systems can offer safer alternatives? The question grows louder every year. Research from Stanford University suggests transportation revolutions often reduce migration hardship not by changing desire, but by changing acceptable risk. That feels exactly right. People still want opportunity. They prefer fewer graves. Reasonable preference. Your ears catch another sound now, but this time it is not a wagon wheel. A locomotive whistle. Distant, future-shaped, inevitable. Not everywhere yet, but coming. The railroads do not erase the Oregon Trail overnight. Wagon migration continues for years. Some routes remain essential, but the cultural center begins shifting. The Great Wagon Age slowly approaches decline. Pause here. This is how eras end. Not with a single dramatic moment. With overlap. Old and new coexist. Wagons still move while railroads expand. Oxen pull while steam engines scream. One world fades while another rises. For a moment it feels as though evening settles over both worlds at once. In one direction, wagon ruts cut through grass. In another, iron rails stretch across land. Smoke rises from cabins and locomotives alike. The pioneer era is changing. The trail that once represented the future is gradually becoming history. Yet its memory grows larger. Stories spread. Legends form. Myths harden. And the Oregon Trail begins transforming from lived experience into national memory. Soon, memory will matter as much as the journey itself. The wagon trail still exists in the earth, though grass has begun reclaiming sections of it. Deep ruts remain in certain places cut so firmly into the land that decades cannot erase them. Wheels no longer pass as they once did. Oxen no longer crowd the crossings in endless lines. Campfires no longer stretch for miles beneath prairie stars. The Great Migration slows, then changes, then becomes memory. And memory's powerful, sometimes more powerful than reality. Your mind drifts across the full span of the Oregon Trail, from the muddy, jumping-off towns of Independence to the wet valleys of Oregon. You can still hear it all if you listen closely. Wagon wheels creaking over dry earth, oxen breathing in cold dawn air, children laughing beside rivers, quiet prayer near graves, rain on canvas, wind over prairie grass. The sounds remain, even after the people are gone. According to research from Harvard University and leading American historians of westward expansion, the Oregon Trail became one of the most significant migration corridors in United States history, shaping settlement patterns, economic growth, and national identity across the 19th century. That statement is true, but incomplete, because statistics alone cannot explain what the trail became in memory. The Oregon Trail grew into myth, not immediately. Gradually, stories told by survivors became family history. Family history became regional legend. Regional legend became national narrative. School books simplified complexity. Popular culture emphasized courage, hardship, and triumph, often correctly, sometimes selectively. Your ears catch another layer now, the sound of storytelling. Grandparents telling children about the trail, fathers recalling river crossings, mothers describing the first winter cabin. Every retelling changes small details. Memory edits, softens, sharpens, protects. Historians from Princeton University note that frontier memory often compresses contradictory truths into cleaner narratives, highlighting resilience while muting ambiguity and moral complexity. That happens here too. The Oregon Trail becomes a story of courage, and it was. It becomes a story of sacrifice, and it was. But it also becomes a story that often minimizes what expansion cost indigenous nations, whose land's sovereignty and lifeways were deeply disrupted. That truth must remain visible. Always. The trail carried dreams westward. It also carried colonization. Two truths coexist. Neither erases the other. Your mind drifts across landscapes forever changed by migration. Wagon ruts become roads. Roads become towns. Towns become cities. Farmland replaces grassland. Trade routes become infrastructure. Borders harden. Nations consolidate power. Movement reshapes geography. And identity. Research from University of Chicago suggests that mass migration events often transform national self-perception as much as physical territory. That feels deeply true for the United States. The pioneer ideal becomes cultural mythology, self-reliance, reinvention, endurance, starting over. These ideas become woven into national storytelling for generations, sometimes inspiring, sometimes misleading, usually both. An intimate truth survives beneath mythology. Most trail emigrants were not legendary heroes in their own minds. They were tired parents, practical farmers, worried mothers, curious children, people solving daily problems. That matters, because history often feels grand only in hindsight. In the moment it feels ordinary. A broken wheel, a missing spoon, wet socks, cold soup, sore feet. Life happens through details. Pause here. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson of the Oregon Trail. Civilizations and nations may be shaped by immense migrations, but those migrations are lived one ordinary discomfort at a time. One step, one repair, one meal, one sunrise. Your mind returns to a single wagon family. Not famous, no monument, no chapter in textbooks, just one ordinary family among thousands. A father tightening wheel bolts at dawn. A mother rationing flour, a child collecting strange stones, another child asking the same question every week. Are we there yet? The question feels timeless and funny, even across centuries. Historians still debate how much the Oregon Trail should be understood as exceptional versus part of broader global migration patterns. Some scholars emphasize uniquely American frontier conditions. Others argue it fits universal patterns of settler migration, land hunger, and frontier transformation. Both views offer insight. No clear single framework captures everything. Perhaps that feels fitting. The trail resists simplification. Your ears catch one final sound, silence. Not empty silence, restful silence. The kind that comes after a long journey. The wagon stops, at last. No more harnessing at dawn. No more counting river crossings. No more measuring miles by aching feet. Only stillness. And in that stillness the human cost and human wonder of the Oregon Trail settle together. Loss and hope, grief and gratitude, exhaustion and renewal. All of it. For a moment it feels as though night falls across the old trail. Stars return above the plains. Wind bends tall grass over fading wagon ruts. Somewhere far away rain falls softly over Oregon forests. The land remembers. Perhaps that is what history really is. Not dead facts. Memory carried forward. Stories preserving footsteps long after footprints vanish. And tonight you have walked those footsteps. From rumor to migration. From prairie to mountain. From dream to settlement. From movement to memory. The Oregon Trail was never merely a road west. It was a test of endurance. A machine of transformation. A corridor of hope and hardship. A place where ordinary people attempted something extraordinary. And somehow, against staggering odds, many endured. That is why the trail still matters. Not because wagons were romantic. Not because suffering was noble. But because the journey reveals something enduring about human nature. When people believe a different future is possible, they will cross astonishing distances to reach it. Even at terrible cost. Even through fear. Even through grief. And perhaps that truth remains as alive now as it was in 1843. As this story comes to rest, take a moment to notice what stayed with you most. Maybe it was the river crossings. Maybe the endless prairie. Maybe the quiet strength of ordinary families who kept moving when stopping would have been easier. I would love to hear what part stayed with you, so leave a comment and share your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed travelling through this story with me, there is another journey waiting for you on this channel where more forgotten worlds and quiet histories are ready to unfold. Blessings to you and your family.